Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the January 18th, 2024 meeting of the Falmouth Zoning Board of Appeals. If I could ask everyone to take a moment to please silence their cell phones. Note that this meeting is being taped by FCTV. I'll start by introducing members of the board. Starting at my far right, the audience's left, is Jerry Patamis. He's an associate member. Moving to the right is Frank Duffy. He's a full voting member. Mark Finneran, who's a full voting member. My name is James Morse. I am a full voting member. And Suzanne Murphy, who is a full voting member, as well as our clerk. Scott Peterson and Tony Pedrucci are unable to join us this evening. We're also joined this evening by Noreen Stockman, the zoning administrator, and Ashley DeMello, our recording secretary. The Zoning Board of Appeals is charged with applying the state zoning statutes as well as the town's zoning bylaws and reviewing and voting on applications. All decisions are made through the public hearing process. Our goal is to hear testimony from the applicants and the public and to allow for a full and fair discussion of the project prior to rendering a decision. To begin each hearing, the clerk will read the public announcement for the hearing and read pertinent information from the file. The applicant or the applicant's representative will then have 15 minutes to make a presentation. Time may be extended by vote of the board. The board will then question the applicant. Next, the public will be invited to comment. Public comment should be directed only at the project. We'd ask you to please refrain from making derogatory or personal statements. Comments can include an opinion in favor or in opposition or to ask a question about the project. Comments should be limited to 2 minutes. The chair will limit discussion in the interest of time if comments become repetitive. All members of the public wishing to speak should wait to be recognized by the chair to come to the podium. Please state your name and address for the record. Please speak into the microphone. It does not amplify your voice, but is provided for the benefit of FCTV viewers. The board may continue the hearing to a future date and time. Otherwise, when the board is satisfied that enough information has been presented to make a decision, the hearing will be closed. After a hearing is closed, no more testimony will be taken. The board shall discuss the proposal amongst themselves, then make a motion to approve or deny the application. The motion will be followed by a summary of key findings and conditions. The affirmative vote of 4 members, a supermajority, is required for the approval of special permits, variances, or appeals. A 3-2 vote is a failure to carry and would result in a denial. Any zoning board of appeals decision may be appealed for as provided in Mass General Law, Chapter 40A, Section 17. First up on this evening's agenda, we have public comment. This public comment is reserved for anything that is not specifically on tonight's agenda. Does any member of the public wish to make a comment about anything that is not on this evening's agenda? We have 2 continuations this evening. As I indicated at the opening, 2 members are not present, so I'll be appointing Jerry Patamis for all matters this evening. On one matter, 8223, regarding 545 Main Street. I know Mr. Patamis was not present at one hearing. He has indicated, however, that he has watched the video, and have you filed the affidavit pursuant to the Mullen Rule?
Yes, that's correct.
Mr. Patamis will then be eligible to continue to participate on this matter. There had been some discussion that Mr. Rahn would be up first. However, I was informed that what is the first hearing scheduled, 7023, is going to be a withdrawal at this time. So continuation of hearing 70-23 Clark, trustees, 711 West Falmouth Highway, requesting modification of special permit 1737 to convert the existing 3-family into a duplex and construct a new duplex. For the applicant, good evening.
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. For the record, Kevin Clower. We had continued the last hearing so I could try to meet up with Assistant Town Council Brian Tobin. I finally had the opportunity to do so yesterday. We had a long, productive conversation. While we agree on a number of points, there are a few points that we don't agree on, specifically regarding the existing non-conforming single-family dwelling located in the residential B portion of this lot. Given the comments from the board and the way they were leaning at the prior hearing, we would like to request a withdrawal without prejudice so we can assess our options moving forward.
Request to withdraw without prejudice. Does the board have any discussion on the request?
None.
None.
I'll make a motion to allow withdrawal without prejudice of this application. Is there a second? Mr. Finneran, I'll give that to you. Any further discussion? All those in favor of allowing withdrawal of the application without prejudice, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? That is a vote 5-0. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Morris, and also thank you to the abutters who have made it a point to be here at the hearings, and we value their input and yours.
Thank you. So that application is withdrawn without prejudice. Next up, we have 08223 Galasso, 545 Main Street, Falmouth, requesting a special permit to redevelop building for dwelling units, commercial accommodations, and a restaurant. It indicates the appeal of the building commissioner's determination, but that was resolved at the last meeting. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for having us back again. Good to see everyone. Happy New Year. My name is Michael Galasso, 107 Lakeview Ave. I'm the applicant and the developer of 545 Main Street. And what I wanted to do this evening is take you quickly through a little presentation to remind you of some of the aspects of the project and then answer any questions that you have. So. Yeah, let me see. Don't think we need that. Okay, as many of you know, it's the former nursing home, Royal Megantic Nursing Home, 545 Main Street. It used to contain 121 nursing beds. It's a little bit over an acre, almost 2 acres. This is a recent rendering of the project as it would look upon completion. Some of the aspects of it is there would be a public civic plaza in the front of the building that would be used by the community, and there'll be a cafe on the ground floor. Main entrance to the building is right up the sidewalk these folks are walking to. And you see there on the left-hand side our passenger van, a eight-person passenger van, electric van that we would use to transport some of our residents. There's another overview of the site. To the right, St. Patrick's Church, and to the left, Mariner Motel. Site plan, which you've previously seen, we've commented on, been approved by the planning board. First, our basement plan shows some of the amenities that we have, which is a physical fitness room and a laundry facility on the ground floor. There's also a community kitchen there and some residential rooms. The main floor, the first floor, is our main entrance into the building, along with the rooms in the round part of the building and the back part. Back part of the building have the studios and one-bedroom units. There's a communal kitchen to be used by all the residents and a co-working space towards the back. Gives you an idea of what a typical room would look like. 2 different concepts for it. These would be the small units in the round part of the building that would all have little kitchenettes. Some of them will have half bathrooms. This just gives you an idea of the kitchen that would be in the studios and the one-bedroom units. So as we know, it's located on Main Street, 545 Main Street. This is what's called a walkable rating that this site would get. It's 71, which is very high, which means that you can walk to pretty much all the amenities in town. It's also served by public transportation. It's a nice letter from Tom, who's the administrator of Cape Cod Transit, supporting the project. This is the electric passenger van that we would have available, that we would operate. And this just gives you another view of how that works. We'll also have 2 electric vehicles that will be available for our residents to use on an hourly basis. And these are the different rates, depending upon what type of vehicle you want to use. And we'll also have 20 electric and man-powered bicycles. So there's often a question about who would be our potential residents of the building. You know, I'm always surprised about who would be interested in living at the 545 Main Street. So we actually interviewed the chief of police, the former chief of police. He said this would be a perfect facility for his recruits. A lot of times when he brings in new people to town to be police officers, they're not quite sure if they have residents here yet, so they need a place quickly that they can stay until they, maybe their family moves to town or become full-time officers. So this is a place for them that they could use, along with teachers who might be new to our community that need an immediate place to live. The fire department, they bring in trainees. They may not be local yet. Obviously, scientists who work at HUI and MBL, many of them are here tonight. Nurses, as you know, our hospital has always a strong need for more nurses. During the summer, you know, our population almost triples, and the demand at the hospital pretty much follows that too. So nurses, doctors, hospital administrators, restaurant employees, hotel and motel employees, J1 students, who come here and work in our Dunkin' Donuts and Starbucks and our other facilities, people who work at the Steamship Authority, construction workers, landscapers, retail workers, returning students, students who may leave Falmouth to go to school and come back here for the summer. I know when I did that, I didn't want to live back at home, so I had a room by the casino. So there are a lot of them who would come back here and work in the summer. They might be lifeguards, they may work in our restaurants, and for whatever reasons, not able to live at their family home, this would be a place for them. There was a question at our last hearing about what the affordability requirements would be for this project. So Mr. Cod requires that 25% of the residential units, the studios and one-bedrooms, must be affordable. The Mr. Cod ordinance doesn't define what affordable is, but we interpret it as being at least 80% of median income. So 25% of the 26 residential units would mean that we're required under Mr. Cod to have 7 units that must be affordable. All the residential units must be placed on the SHI. We have had discussions the last couple of weeks with DHCD regarding the units to be placed on the SHI. They just want to talk to our town planner before they give us a letter confirming that. What we are proposing is that all 26 of the residential units, so all the studios and one-bedroom units, will be affordable. With 7 affordable at 80%, and the remainder, 19, will be affordable between 80 and 120%. So although the requirement is for us only to have 7, we'll go way beyond that. And 36% of all the units, that's 36% of the total number of units will be affordable in perpetuity. I know you can't read this. I have copies so we can hand out. This is the graph that we use to determine what the rents will be. I know some developers have said they would use rents for Boston, but we use the ones for Barnstable County. So at the top, and I'll hand out one so you can have those, is what the rents are at different levels of affordability. This is provided by Mass Housing Partnership, is what we all, meaning all us who develop affordable housing in our community, use to determine what the rents will be.
Can't you, excuse me?
Sure.
Can't you just hit the plus sign and blow that up a little bit for us right now, so perhaps people can read it as they listen along? The top middle there, there's a plus. The middle, on the top, middle,
Middle, top,
other middle, right in the center.
Elizabeth, thank you.
If you move it up, we can go a little more. There you go.
Is that good?
Yeah, one more might even do it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Now we have to go down here.
That's good, right there.
Perfect. Thank you.
So 80% rent for the SRO units, which are the small units that just don't have a full kitchen, a full bathroom, would be $1,208. We are not right now including any of those in our affordability. We are only including the one-bedroom and the two-bedroom, I'm sorry, the studios and the one-bedrooms. Right now, we haven't been able to convince DHCD to allow the SROs to be part of the SHI. We are working on that, but right now, it's only the studios and the one-bedrooms. So you can see the rent would range between $1,200 and $1,700. Okay? Any questions on that? I thought I'd just quickly cover, oops, sorry.
Do you want to zoom out
Yeah,
now?
let's go back up.
Sorry.
Thank you. No, you're much better than,
How's
Good.
that? Is that good?
yep. So some of the improvements, the environmental improvements we're doing to the building, obviously reusing an existing building reduces the carbon emissions versus building a new building. We're going to replace all the existing fossil fuel powered mechanical equipment, the boilers, the hot water heaters, with energy efficient electric equipment. We're going to install rooftop solar. All our exterior lighting will be solar powered. We're going to provide 2 shared electric cars, as we mentioned before. We also have the 8-passenger electric van. We're also going to provide 32 human and electric powered bicycles. So just a quick about affordable housing economics. So Typical development cost per unit for affordable housing now ranges between $450,000 to $650,000. That's here on the Cape. If you're up in Boston, it's probably close to $800,000. This project, because it's an existing building that we're buying at a very reasonable price, it's going to range between $250,000 to $300,000 per unit. So I think we're getting a pretty good bargain with this project, even though we're going to pretty much demolish everything on the inside and replace all the mechanical equipment, the electrical equipment, the plumbing equipment. That's where we're at. It's about a $17 million project for 71 units. So at our last meeting, we talked about providing additional parking. So Bob Ament and myself have spent since the last meeting that we had, looking for additional parking spaces. And you can't just go up to someone and say, hey, I'm a nice guy, we're gonna build affordable housing, can we park some cars on your property? Especially downtown. A lot of people might have future plans for their property. They don't want to tie it up for a long period of time. So just to give you an idea, there's the additional cost that we would have of getting those off-site parking spaces. It increases our operating expenses. It reduces what's called our net operating income. That's what lenders use to determine the size of the loan the project would support. So it also reduces the amount of private financing. It would increase the amount of public subsidy. And it also removes that site, wherever we put the cars, from potential housing development. Because you go from maybe a vacant parcel that you could build some housing on to one that's just gonna have cars. This is the environmental impact of 12 additional cars. Each car emits about 4.6 tons of carbon a year. Times 12 cars, that's 55 tons of additional carbon that's going to be put in our air right here in downtown. I'm sure you're familiar with the local comprehensive plan that's been adopted by our town meeting. It called out a number of things that are applicable to this project. Does that need to be blown up, or can you read that?
Wouldn't hurt.
Okay. So one of the policies is that Falmouth will allow for greater infill residential development where appropriate. I think the most appropriate place for that is in our downtown, where there's public transportation and there's sewer. It will allow for the market to create multiple housing opportunities so there's more choice. And that Falmouth will accept the responsibility for providing housing for all people in all stages of their life. My experience in having similar facilities is that we get a lot of seniors that end up living there, and they like living there. So, mixed-use development and adaptive reuse should be encouraged. That's exactly what we are doing here. We're taking a vacant building that's been used as a nursing home for many years and putting it into a use that we desperately need in our community. And it's a mixed use. It's residential, it's commercial, it's got a cafe in it. So it calls for us to create a strategy based on redevelopment and adaptive reuse of existing structures, leading to new, innovative housing types. I think that's exactly what we're doing here. I think our only problem is that we haven't taken these policies and put them into our zoning ordinance and other documents. But this is what was voted on by town meeting. This is our housing strategy. So let me just hit on a couple more things, if I could, please. At the last meeting, there was a concern about public participation, not only in our project, but probably in all projects too. So this project, as you know, has, I think, close to 30 letters of support right now from both state and local elected officials, from chambers of commerce, not only Falmouth, but from Cape Cod Chamber of Commerce. The EDIC, the planning board approved the project after 4 to 5 hearings. And as you know, we sent out notices to all the abutters twice, just for the planning board. Not only that, but my track record shows that I always involve the community in my projects, even before we come to a public hearing. In my project in North Falmouth, I worked with the North Falmouth Village Association. We had a number of meetings at the North Falmouth School before we even came to the ZBA. I like to involve the neighbors as much as possible. In this particular case, we had planned to meet with the abutters across the street, and I know you just recently received a letter from them. We were gathered in their meeting room. They asked us to come. Some of them did. And when we were there, we were told we wanted to hear what the concerns were so we could address them. But they wouldn't talk to us because our attorney wasn't there. We didn't bring our attorney. We were willing to talk to them. Of course, that's a right they have. But it would have been nice if they would have told us before we got there. But we tried to set up a number of meetings with them after that, but it just never happened, unfortunately. Our other abutters, the church, and the Mariner Motel, are very much in favor of our project. They have no concerns about it. So we had 3 meetings with the Affordable Housing Committee. We're here at our 3rd meeting with the ZBA. There's been a lot of publicity about this project in the enterprise. There's been public hearing notices put in the enterprise. Notices mailed out to all the neighbors within 300 feet. And as I said, the meeting that we attempted to have with the neighbors and listen to their concerns. So I think that we have adequate parking for this project. I believe that the other things that we have done, which are called out and permitted under the Mr. Cod ordinance, helps support that with the electric van, the electric cars, the bicycles, the public transportation, and walking. There are probably close to 2,000 employees who work between the post office and our site, all within walking distance. Many of those will be living at our facility. You know, I'm almost a lifelong resident of Falmouth. You know, our family moved here in '63. My Aunt Tilly used to own the diner almost right across the street, right down the street from where we're at. And, you know, we've been involved in the community for many, many years. There was a concern issued in the letter that came out this afternoon about the ownership of the property and whether or not we're just going to flip it after a few years. That's not what I do. I've never done that. You could check on any of the properties that I built, which are all, pretty much all affordable housing. I've owned some of them for more than 20 years. You know, I'm dedicated to what I do. This is all that I do. The funding restrictions that we have on the property require us to meet certain demands. The property is monitored and audited yearly. We submit a report that says, an independent report to Mass Housing, to any of all our lenders, that they look to see who's been there, who lives there, make sure they all qualify in any other aspects of the operation of the property. I'll have a full-time staff there, 24 hours a day. There'll be someone there on site to monitor the property. And I'm not far away, phone call away, if anything needs to be taken care of. So I appreciate your time tonight. I'm here to answer any questions. Bob has a few things he'd like to say too. And maybe I'd like to ask those who are in favor of the project. I don't think the board has time to listen to everyone tonight. If maybe you could just stand. So, thank you all for your support.
Well, I have one question for you. When you showed the comparative renovation costs for units, it appeared that the costs that you were comparing to were single-family home development versus your units? Because you had, what was it, 450,000 to 6, some?
Well, my development in North Falmouth, McGantic Crossing, cost $500,000 per unit. Those were 2- and 3-bedroom apartments.
Right, but I think the difference here is that you're reusing and renovating space as opposed to those are separate standalone dwelling units that are built, right?
Yeah, we're renovating space versus building new, correct.
Right, and that those could be, say, 3-bedroom as opposed to your running like a single-bedroom, pretty much unit.
Yeah, I think that range I gave you is pretty much a range between people building studio apartments. You know, actually, studio apartments cost more to build than a two-bedroom and a three-bedroom, believe it or not, because there's so much in that small space. The cost per square foot of building a small little unit is typically higher than a one-bedroom or a two-bedroom.
But you're mixing apples and oranges. I mean, they have smaller square footage initial costs, but that's really not an accurate comparison.
I think on a
Because
cost
you
per
would
square
be
foot.
talking about, 300 and 400 square feet as opposed to 1,200. You can't compare them, it's just not a fair
Yeah,
comparison.
the cost per square foot
As-
for something larger would be less.
Yeah,
Yeah.
understandable, but.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay.
As you know, but for your record, I'm Bob Ament. I'm Mr. Galasso's attorney for the project and a Falmouth attorney. I really just wanted to comment on a few of the issues that have been of concern to the board. But first, as Mr. Galasso said, there's really overwhelming support for this project. It's not universal. We're aware of the concerns, but we're not sure of what the concerns are, but of the opposition of people who own property across Main Street. But it's still overwhelming support from state legislators, business leaders like the Chamber of Commerce and the EDIC, large employers like the MBL and the Falmouth Hospital, which have written letters, and many, many individuals. And it's been remarkable to me that this is a project that so many people are aware of and have brought up to me because they've watched on television. And usually when there's that much interest, it's projects that there's a lot of opposition to. This is a project with overwhelming support from just about everybody. I went to see a doctor last week who brought this up and said to me, I wasn't able to hire an assistant because of the housing problem. Finally, I found somebody who was able to live at home with her mother. There are stories like that from everybody who's aware of the situation, and I'm sure from many people in this room. So, this affects people. There's been concern raised about the density, about the size of this project. We're dealing with an existing building. We're not adding on to it. We want to use the whole building. There'll be some use of it, and there should be, of course, reuse of this building. The size of the lot would allow 62 commercial accommodation units by special permit. The zoning bylaw says that the Board of Appeals can approve those units having kitchen facilities. That was amended by town meeting a few years ago. Some or all of those commercial accommodation units could be suites. And the zoning bylaw further says that if you have a commercial accommodations unit, which, by the way, is allowed in the residential district, in the agricultural district, and in the general residence district. Our zoning bylaw allows commercial accommodations. And in those districts, you can have a restaurant with no more than 2 seats per number of rooms. So this lot is big enough for 62 commercial accommodation units and a 124-seat restaurant. It's not what we're proposing, but if we're talking about density and size of the property, That's what's allowed. Now, by the way, that limit on the number of restaurant seats does not apply in the business district, and I believe that business redevelopment is a business district, but in any case, 124 seats, along with 62 commercial accommodation units. We know that under Mr. Cod, you could have 33 units on this size lot by right. 33 dwelling units. Those 33 dwelling units could be 2-bedroom or 3-bedroom units by right. And each of the dwelling units only requires a single parking space under Mr. Cod. We could convert this building to 33 dwelling units, 2 or 3 bedrooms each, more bedrooms than we're proposing, and have 26 parking spaces left over, which would meet the requirement for a 52-seat restaurant, a Class II restaurant, which would be allowed by right. So the Mr. Cod bylaw allows by right 33 2- or 3-bedroom apartments, plus the 52-seat restaurant. No special permit required. No parking reduction strategies required. There are other uses that could be made of the property. And we are aware of inquiries for using it for various nonprofit rehabilitation uses and the like. And there will be a use of this property that uses the whole building. But this use will serve the town very well with minimal impacts on neighbors. Now, I'd like to talk a little bit about the parking issue. First, you know that we've submitted a traffic report back in October by McMahon Associates. They are professionals. They stand behind their work. They don't think there's a parking problem. They compare the nursing home use that was the use of the property with the proposed trip generation from what we're proposing to do. And they find that there'll be a total number of increase during peak hours in the morning of 3 new traffic trips. And in the afternoon peak hour, 1 new traffic trip. They feel that as the number of people with cars may be as low as 50%. They discussed this, and they discussed their rationale. These are professionals. Just want to remind you that you have this report.
Can I ask you,
May I complete my remarks? Thank you.
I'm next.
We've searched hard for more parking. We've submitted to you a set of conditions that include a lot of provisions about the parking. Some employers in Falmouth whom we have contacted have agreed and sent you letters stating that if there are employees, their employees who live at this facility who need to leave their car. They want to have a car, but they have other ways of getting to work. After all, we're going to have a van that's going to have a schedule to go to Woods Hole in the morning, pick people up in the evening. You can go to the hospital, and so on. We're providing ways for people to get to work. But the employers have agreed, those that have written this letter to you, that employees, if they have a car, they could keep their car where they work. MBL, for instance, has a large parking lot generally used in the summer that's off of Oyster Pond Road. Other institutions have places where people would bring their car every day if they were driving to work, but they won't need to use a car. So some people, many people, who live in this facility won't have a car. Some people have a car, but there will be those other arrangements. We don't think that we need to provide more parking than is available on site, but we've worked hard to find some. We've identified 3 potential locations on or just off Main Street, appropriately zoned, where we can have 12 to 20 parking spaces. One of them is within 300 feet of the site, within a minute's walk. One of those is within a 4-minute walk. The other one is about a 10-minute walk. We haven't completed negotiations for these spaces, but we think we can do that so that we can assure you that we have a lease of additional parking spaces that would be either for tenants or for staff, a minimum of 12 spaces. Our thinking based on the previous hearings is that if we could provide 12 such spaces, that's likely to win the support of the board, and we hope that's the case. We therefore ask if we can provide such parking that the board would approve this project as presented without a reduction in the number of units. We've talked about with Mr. Galasso about reducing the number of units. He feels he cannot do that and make the project work. He is willing to reduce the number of seats in the restaurant. We've proposed a 25% reduction from 24 seats. Originally, the proposal to the planning board was 37 seats, reducing it to 18. He's not sure he can get a tenant for such a small space, but assuming he can, we would like to be able to come back after a period of operation, whether it's a year or 2 years, if we don't, or show that we have some other parking that we've arranged and not have that limitation. But the number of units he hasn't been able to agree that he would reduce. So as I was saying, we hope you would approve the project, and I know you want to have a carefully thought out decision, which I'm sure will have many conditions. As you know, I submitted to you a set of restrictions, a set of conditions that include restrictions for your consideration. And I hope that tonight you would be able to vote to have the administrator prepare a decision. Now, if you want to vote to approve the project tonight, fine, but I think you want a decision in front of you to look at. So somebody's going to draft that. And I know the board has suggested that it's a concern, but this is, I think, the 3rd hearing. I think you could make a positive motion subject to our providing that parking agreement, that lease of a minimum of 12 spaces between now and the next hearing so that it can be specified, particular location in the decision with some language, which I'm happy to give you as an additional condition. That would say that the lease would initially be for not less than a particular term. We suggest 3 years for use by staff and occupants. At least 12 parking spaces within walking distance, which I've suggested 15 minutes maximum, at a location satisfactory to the board, with the provision that after not less than 2 years of operation, if the applicant can demonstrate to the board that the off-site parking is not required, the board may remove or modify that condition. Even with the additional parking, we're going to have all of those amenities, those traffic and parking reduction strategies in place. The planning board has answered many of, or addressed many of the questions that have been posed by abutters across the street in their decisions. Remember, they granted a special permit, not just the site plan review. Planning board approved site plan review under Mr. Codd. They approved this project with 45 commercial accommodation units and the 26 residential units with many conditions. They also granted us special permit allowing parking as proposed in the back of the property and within 5 feet of the property line. No appeals were filed with respect to that decision. I want to make sure, I know you have the site plan review decision of the planning board, and most likely you have the planning board's special permit, but it wasn't included in the initial filing, so I just want to be sure that's part of your record. And so I'm going to give you a copy of that before I sit down. And those are the comments I have. We obviously are very anxious to get an approval and hope that the conditions we've suggested and the efforts we've made for parking, with the requirement that we come up with the actual lease, will satisfy the board. Thank you.
Before we go into board questions, there is one letter Madam Clerk was going to read before that I managed to skip over you. I'm sorry.
It's all right. I have a letter from the town of Falmouth, from Gary Street. It's Dear Zoning Board of Appeals, enclosed, please find my affidavit in opposition to Mr. Ament's filed appeal regarding my alleged decision, ZBA number 082-23. Eleanor McKay's affidavit is also enclosed in support of the building department's opposition to the appeal. As I stated multiple times to Mr. Ament, my letter was not a final decision or order of the building commissioner, but merely a non-binding advisory opinion provided as a courtesy to an applicant, informing them that a special permit is required for commercial accommodations in the Mr. Cod Density Overlay District. I also informed Mr. Ament many times that the only final decision or order I would make on the matter would be whether or not to issue a building permit. Mr. Ament was fully aware that the letter that is the subject of this appeal was not a final decision or order of the building commissioner, and received the letter only after inundating the building department with so many requests for it that he was distracting our department from functioning at its best. I hereby withdraw my non-binding advisory opinion that is the subject of this appeal and the letter dated September 8th, 2023. In the future, the only written correspondence I intend to provide will be an approval/denial of a building permit or a response to a written zoning enforcement request for an alleged violation. While a non-binding advisory opinion can be an important tool to assist applicants with the building permit application process, it is just as important to ensure that the applicants do not abuse this assistance by misrepresenting these opinions in order to confuse boards and unnecessarily consume municipal resources. Signed, Gary Street.
Mr. Chairman,
Excuse me, thank you.
Time out.
For the record, the board upheld the decision of the, I apologize, I did not.
No, that's right.
This is different people. The board upheld the determination of the building inspector,
Yes.
and I don't know if there was an appeal, I haven't checked that, but then we began to proceed pursuant to the special permit, so, thank you. Why don't we does the board have questions, or do we want to let some public comment in? I'm happy to reserve questions till after public comment. Public comment, then.
We have the building commissioner.
The building
Commissioner, might wanna
Commissioner,
go first.
no, the building commissioners, all right, Mr. Street, good evening. For the folks at the door, we have a few more seats up front if you'd like to come in.
About 5 of them.
I'm sorry, I thought that was a piece of correspondence.
She just told me to read it.
Good evening. My name is Gary Street. I'm the building commissioner in the town of Falmouth. I've lived here for 42 years, and I started working in the building department in 2002. I'm going to give you an introduction to myself and my background, and tell you how we function downstairs. And I'm here tonight in support of this project. I'll state that right up front because there's been a lot of talk that I am against this project. I'm not. I'm in favor of it. This is a unique project that has never before been formulated in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. So I think it's a great project, and it needs to be approved. My construction experience, I was licensed by the Commonwealth in 1979 as a building contractor and as a commissioner inspector of buildings in 2004. And there's just over 400 individuals in the Commonwealth that hold that title. My duties is for the safety and harmony of the community through the interpretation of the building codes and the zoning bylaws. These are the building codes that I'm charged with enforcing. The commercial building code, the international building code, commercial building code, the residential building code, the international residential building code with mass amendments. 521 CMR, Architectural Access Board enforcement for handicapped accessibility to buildings. The International Energy Code. The Mechanical Code for heating, ventilation, and air conditioning. All the FEMA regulations for all our floodplain properties in town. The existing building codes for buildings that are already constructed and need to be modified. The IFC, International Fire Code. NFPA 101, Life Safety Fire Code. NFPA 13, the Sprinkler Code. And NFPA 72, the Fire Alarm Code. All these codes are what I review for every project, every single application that comes before me down in the building department. I have a staff of 17 professional and dedicated inspectors and office staff. Our duties are to issue building permits, which last year we issued 8,770 building permits in the town. We did over 12,300 inspections and 270 certificates of inspections. All the schools in town, all the churches, all the restaurants, all the bars. I'm in charge of weights and measures also. We have 116 gas pumps in town and 186 scales. So when you go out to fill up your car and you get 10 gallons of gas and you pay for that, you want to make sure you get 10 gallons of gas, not 9.5, because you're getting cheated. Or on the other side, if you're getting 10.5, you're cheating the merchant. So we make sure everybody's even and playing squarely. I'm the steward of Chapter 240, the zoning bylaws. These are the zoning bylaws compared to the building code. What we do is we interpret and fairly apply these codes and bylaws to all the properties in town. We have 24,913 properties in this town. Every property is unique, and it has to fit into a box. The zoning bylaws require us to examine what we do on our properties. An example is, I can allow people to build up to 20% lot coverage. You can allow them to build up to 25% lot coverage with a special permit. That's fitting into the box. I also deal with different districts as far as the zoning code goes. The agricultural district, business district, industrial district, marine district, public use, residential, along with separate overlay districts: coastal pond overlay, floodplain, solar, Mr. Cod, water resource protection, and wildlife. Special use regulations, non-conforming structures, use and lots, dimensional regulations, lot requirements, coverage, setbacks, height, density, general regulations as far as parking goes, signs, and landscaping. Why are we here? Why are we here tonight? We're here tonight because of commercial accommodations. There are currently 37 motels, hotels, and B&Bs in town, all requiring a special permit from ZBA. And most of them have a special permit because they have commercial accommodations. This one's no different. That's why we're here, the commercial accommodations. I have a presentation I'd like to put up on the board. Actually, can I close this one out? Yeah. .545 Main Street project. These are the existing conditions. Lot size is 67,892 square feet. Zoned business redevelopment and general residence, split zoned, and mixed residential commercial overlay district. Mr. Cod. This is a proposal right here. Proposed plan. A great plan. 26 residential units, 45 commercial accommodation units, 24-seat Class II restaurant, a gym, a laundry area, in-house commercial kitchen, communal kitchen, and working space, with a total of 59 parking spots. What fits in the box? I discussed what the box was when I presented the 20% and 25%. This project needs to fit into the box. This is the box. I made two of them for two different scenarios. Mr. Cod, 7.5C, residential multifamily dwelling units with a density of 20 per 40,000 square feet. 20,000 or 20 units for 40,000 square feet. That's 2,000 square feet per residential unit. They're proposing 26 residential units. That uses up 52 square feet of the lot area. Each one of these golf balls represents a unit. Very visual. Commercial accommodations. The lot shall contain not less than 10,000 square feet plus an area additional 1,000 square feet for each guest unit over 5. I come up with 10 commercial accommodation units, 5 for the initial and 5 additional units. Here's the box. I've got 36 units right here. Here's the calculation. Go to the bottom, calculation. Step 1, 67,892 square feet. We take the 52,000 off for the Mr. Cod 26 residential units. We're left with 15,892. Step 2, you take that for your commercial accommodations, subtract 10,000 for your first initial 5 units, leaves you with 5,892. Divide that leftover by 1,000, and you have 5 additional units. 26 plus 10 equals 36 allowed. This is assuming that you will allow the commercial accommodations and Mr. Cod in one structure. Okay, that's the 36 units. Their current proposal is for 71 units. 26 Mr. Cod, same as my proposal, and 45 commercial accommodations. Here's 45. Do you want me to dump them out? It doesn't fit. Doesn't fit the box. This fits the box. Now, with my scenario of 26 and 10, we go to our parking requirements. 75F2D and 14(1)E of the zoning bylaw. Mr. Cod requires one parking space per unit. Commercial accommodations, one parking space per unit. The restaurant and bar, one space per 2 seats. So, Mr. Cod, 26. Commercial accommodations, 10. Restaurant, 12. Total parking spots required, 48. They have 59. They have 11 left over for staff, for guests. This scenario works because this is what the zoning bylaw tells us we can do. What they're proposing to do is count the area of the land twice. You can't do that. You only get one bite of the apple. You can't double dip into the well. This is 10 pounds of potatoes in a 5-pound sack. That's my presentation. I recommend that you approve it on those terms.
The public comment? We'll get back to you, don't worry, Mr. Robbins. Sir?
Can I just clean up real quick?
Certainly.
Do you have any questions for him before he goes?
When's the commission have time to play golf?
Does anyone have questions for him before he leaves?
It's public comment, it's not.
That's what she's getting at.
Thank you.
Go right ahead, thank you.
My name is Sandra Brulette, and I am an owner and trustee at Pondview Park condominiums at 536 Main Street.
Can you move closer to the microphone, because the audience on television has to hear you, and it doesn't pick up
I'm
well.
speaking on behalf of some of the abutters, both at Pondview, as well as some of the abutters located behind the proposed project for 545 Main Street, located on Maribel Lane. Our managing trustee, Maureen Lip Schoonmaker, is unable to attend and speak due to surgery, so I will do so. And I'm a bit nervous in speaking, so thank you for allowing me to read the letter of our concerns that Maureen sent today to all of the zoning board members on our behalf. The abutters would like to go on record to disagree with some statements regarding the abutters at the previous zoning board meeting, as well as printed in the Falmouth Enterprise in both articles and letters to the editor. The abutters are opposed to this proposed development. The abutters did not speak at the last zoning board meeting, as they assumed they were not allowed to speak again, as in the previous planning board meetings. They were told they were only allowed to speak in a public setting once. Our position as abutters is that we agree with the building commissioner's decision, and as such, take the position that the planning board did not have the legal authority to grant approval due to the fact that a commercial accommodation, restaurant, and 45 commercial units is not allowed in a business redevelopment district without a special permit from the Board of Appeals. Also of concern to the abutters is whether there has been compliance with the statements in the planning board's summary letter specifically. The Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities, formerly known as the Department of Housing and Community Development, has indicated to the applicant that in order for the 26 residential dwelling units having one-year lease terms to be included on the town's SHI, they would need to be separated from the 30-day rental term units as its own development through a separate ownership arrangement. It was stated at the planning board meetings through the developer's lawyer, Bob Ament, that if this requirement was enforced, it would affect Mr. Galasso's ability to secure financing partners and developers. Has this separate ownership entity been established as required by the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities? Has financing been secured, and who are the developers, owners, and partners? What are the developers' short and long-term intentions? Do they intend to sell the property, or are they guaranteeing that they will own the property for at least 10 years? The plan submitted and approved by the planning board stated that there would be 2 bunk rooms and 21 single rooms without bathrooms, all sharing a central bathroom space. Yet in the abutters meeting with the developers, it was stated by one of the developers that this was in the process of changing and that all the rooms would have their own separate bathrooms. Therefore, this is a change from what was the original plan that was approved from the planning board, and as the planning board wrote in its letter, the plan shall be constructed as approved. Any changes shall be reviewed by the planning board to determine if a modification of this decision is necessary. Pursuant to 240-2.1 of the zoning bylaw, no permit for occupancy of the new construction shall be issued until the planning board is satisfied that the conditions of this approval. This project is presented as affordable housing, but in fact, 45 units are really likened to a, quote, rooming house or motel, and their use is not covered by permit from the planning board under CODD. Therefore, these 45 commercial units, restaurant and motel, are in a business development district, which leads to a different scenario altogether. This leads the abutters to question what really are the intentions of the developers. Is this really affordable housing or something much different? A restaurant and motel rooming house type workforce housing under the auspice of affordable housing and riding the backs of COD's affordable housing intention. The planning board's letter stated that the commercial accommodations units may be rented for periods of 30 days, and if a 30-day rental is renewed or extended, it may be for less than 30 days. This doesn't seem to address the affordable year-round housing needs that CODD intended to address, as the purpose of the bylaw was meant to increase affordable year-round housing, not for use of a restaurant and a motel rooming house. This development is not serving the desperately needed year-round housing needs of families, single-parent families, and young working adults, as less than half of these units provide for permanent year-round housing. With regards to the restaurant, will it eventually want a liquor license, change its hours of operations, want entertainment, as this will change the environment of what is intended in their proposal? How realistic and effective will the rideshare program really be in deferring how many parking spaces are needed for the residents? And who will be monitoring the long-term compliance with this program as to how many residents will actually be allowed to park cars on the property, including guests of the residents? How realistic is the electric bike program in deferring how many parking spaces are needed for the residents? As how does this work to accommodate inclement weather in the winter months? The parking and traffic will be much different with this project than it was when the building was a nursing home. The nursing home residents did not have their own cars requiring parking. The parking and traffic were short-term for both employees and visitors. And what are the long-term management arrangements in place? Will the management team be in-house, working directly for the developers and owners, or will it be sourced out? Will the management team be permanently on-site, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week? What monitoring, compliance, and safety protocols will be in place, as well as ongoing supervision for compliance with the visitor and parking restrictions long-term? In conclusions, the abutters want to reiterate these very important parking concerns. The planning board allowed a reduction of 24 parking spaces from the 26 spaces required for the 26 residential units. That means there must be 2 spaces on site devoted to the residential units. The 24-seat restaurant requires 12 parking spaces. The Zoning Board of Appeals application and the Planning Board special permit states there are 45 commercial accommodation units. The bylaw requires 1 1/10 spaces per unit. That would require 49 spaces for 45 units. Therefore, 49 commercial accommodation units parking plus 12 restaurant parking plus 2 from reduction equals 63 parking spaces needed. The parking plan proposal shows 53 spaces shown and provided. The parking is short by 10 spaces. In addition, 240-14.11 requires that parking shall be located in the same zoning district allowing the activity it serves. The prior planning board correspondence and diagram states that there are approximately 17 parking spaces located in residential district on the southerly end of the lot where commercial accommodations and restaurants are not allowed. That would further reduce the amount of lawful parking available from 53 spaces to 36 spaces, where 63 spaces would be required even after the planning board reduction, making the parking short by 27 spaces. The parking out back next to the residential district is not protected as pre-existing non-conforming use. Because if the non-conforming use is not used for 2 years, that protection is lost. The nursing home has been closed for at least 2 years, therefore the non-conforming protection has been lost through non-use, thus any parking out back can't be closer than 20 feet from the residential property line. A special permit would be required to restore and change the use from a nursing home to commercial accommodation and restaurant. The abutters are very concerned and opposed to the proposal from Michael Galazzo with regards to 545 Main Street. We thank the zoning board for the opportunity to again speak our concerns. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Bill Enos. I am the direct abutter and the owner of Cape and Island Draperies on the edge of the Main Street. I'm all in favor of low-income housing for the right location. I don't think a lot of people are aware about all the low-income housing we have behind Walgreens, behind Dunkin' Donuts. Also that I understand that it was just approved for 104 more low-income housing with the old Phase building, and that's supposed to start, I guess, in February, for 104 more low-income housing there. I think the planning board should be ashamed of themselves for allowing it. They're not considering the characteristic of this town. We don't have that space. We don't have the parking there, as they allow that Vineyard Homes place. They have a restaurant on one side, and on the other side, there's some audio company there. And they also have apartments up top. They only have enough parking barely for them people to, for the apartments and the workers there. So they've been parking across the street. I've been paying attention, watching this. And, there's other places for this. My proposal would be, like I said, I'm all in favor. They did a great job at the Housing Authority on Main Street. And we all should be ashamed of ourselves for the dilapidated police station that we have. I'm proposing, because Mr. Glasso said that he talked to the chief and they would need places for their candidates, let them move into the nursing home. Top floors for the candidates, the 2 floors for the officers to conduct business. Downstairs, you got concrete that big. It wouldn't be that much or difficult to erect themselves, and put another low-income or affordable housing or housing unit like they did on Main Street. So you have that Edward Mark building. They can incorporate that or knock it down, so if you have elderly people living in that housing, they can walk over to the senior center. We don't have the parking there. We just don't have it. And a lot of my customers say to me, Bill, I'm not coming down to your store. I'm staying totally away from your place in the summer. It affects my business. And I've invited everyone, come sit there at my desk and look out the window, see the the congestion of traffic. And they said affordable homes, the last meeting I heard, it was $1,500 with no stove, and you share a bathroom. And now they want to get an off-site residence. I can tell you right now, I'm not going to turn around and wait for some bus to pick me up to bring me to my car somewhere, worry about someone messing with my car either. It just doesn't make sense. So I really hope that you think about what we're doing, the congestion. We already have the other conglomerate building there on Clinton Ave, and it's just too congested here downtown. Thank you very much.
Hi, everybody. It's sort of natural to me to talk to the people I'm talking to, but I understand I'm supposed to face this way, right? Okay. So my name is Ben Weiss. I'm an engineer at the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution. I'm 26 years old, and I moved to Falmouth 3 years ago. It actually just came up on my anniversary in January. Since I moved to Falmouth, I've moved 6 times. I've lived in people's attics. I've lived in small shack-like things in people's backyards. I've shared houses with as many as 12 people, including a baby, 2 people over the age of 75, and renters on top of the family that was already living there. Why was the first question that came to mind as a curious person who was excited about my job and excited about this town. The answer is that there simply isn't enough housing. A few of my colleagues are here today sort of representing early career people who are trying to embrace this place as a home, trying to engage in the sciences and the engineering that make Falmouth and Woods Hole so much of what they are. But I continue to watch colleagues either not take jobs here or leave jobs in many cases due to pressures around the housing situation. If it isn't already clear, I'm here to unequivocally speak in support of this development because I think that it is a creative solution that confronts many of the problems that I've heard come up in other conversations around sewering or the lack of space for new developments by taking advantage of a building that is already existing. I think what is somewhat discouraging as a young person trying to make a life and a home for myself here is that when I hear what the reasons are for not moving forward these sorts of projects, and I hear that it comes down to parking spaces ultimately, it makes me wonder how and why a town of brilliant people isn't able to come up with creative solutions when that feels like a relatively simple reason to not move forward on such a creative and potentially positive proposal. At work, I often go to meetings and I look around the room, and not only am I the youngest person in the room by a couple decades, but most of those folks are also looking at retirement in the next 5 to 10 years. This is great as far as it means that I get to pick up skills from people who have been working in this job for so long and have so much valuable knowledge, but then when they talk about their retirement plans in 5 to 10 years, I can't help but wonder who is going to be there to fill their shoes if none of us can find places to live. So although this might not be an appealing proposal to some of you who own houses or have more developed lives here, I certainly could tell you that I'd rather wait for a bus than move 6 times in 3 years if the housing is adequate for just getting a start in this amazing town that I've grown to love. So that is in short what I wanted to say, and I'd also like to just say that I'm one voice of many, many colleagues of mine who are all extremely excited about this proposal and would be truly disappointed to see it not move forward for some of the reasons that have been brought to the floor today. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Stephen Rafferty. I'm a resident in Precinct 2. I live at 34 King Street. So I'm not a direct abutter because St. Patrick's Catholic Church is between my house and this proposed development. So I can only look across St. Patrick's to see it. I'm not a direct abutter, so I can't make that claim as I'm going to talk to you. However, I did take the time a few weeks back when the secretary, the new deputy secretary, or whatever the gentleman is, of housing in Massachusetts came down to talk about the need for housing and specifically to tour this facility and look at the project. I got an opportunity to stand in there, listen to what was going on, and see the facility and understand better the overall proposal for the project and what it was. It seemed to me at the time, and still does, to be an excellent reuse of that property. So I stand before you tonight with a perspective that I've yet to hear this evening. There are rules, and we have to follow the rules when the rules are stated. And then there are principles. And rules are created because of principles. Our zoning bylaws are based upon principles, but they are the rules. When the rules come in conflict with principles, somebody's got to adjudicate. So as the system of our government is established and set up, the planning board reviews projects for conformance with the rules. And when you don't conform to the rules, you as a board become the people to determine whether principles are being met, because the rules don't cover the specifics of the case in front of you. I would contend that we have a developer who's looked at the rule relative to parking, realized that the principle is that you have to provide adequate facilities for transportation and parking, and has done a better than adequate, perhaps innovative and creative process to answer the transportation question. You hear a lot from a lot of people about other things around other rules, but I think the question in front of you relative to parking is, what's the principle? Is the provision for transportation adequate and safe? Thank you.
Good evening. My name is David Garrison. I'm the chair of the Falmouth Affordable Housing Committee, and I rise in support of this project. I should note at the outset of my comments that I'm familiar with the regulatory world in which this board operates. I was a member of the Cleveland Heights, Ohio Planning Commission for 6 years, a body that approved all special permits for a town of 50,000. And I was an elected advisory neighborhood commissioner for 8 years in Washington, D.C., and our commission covered much of Capitol Hill neighborhood and reviewed all requests for variances and special exceptions. Thus, I have some sympathy for the world in which this board operates. Our Affordable Housing Committee sent a letter of strong support for the 545 Main Street to this board some months ago. My comments this evening flow from observing the most recent hearing that this board had on Mr. Galasso's project. Our committee's view is that Mr. Galasso has brought to this body a creative, indeed an innovative proposal for the reuse of an unusual structure in the midst of our downtown. His proposal would bring badly needed affordable units to the town, many of them specifically designed to provide housing for single individuals working at key institutions such as HUI and MBL and the Falmouth Hospital, among others. This board's focus on the number of parking spaces in this project as the critical factor seems passing strange. Mr. Galasso his plans present a range of clever, forward-leaning systems he will provide to address the transportation needs of the residents, employees, and customers of this property. This board seems to be insisting that additional parking spaces be provided, adding increased and unnecessary costs to the project, or alternatively, to asking that the number of units be reduced, neither result of which is in the town's best interest. I am persuaded that Mr. Galasso's approach is sound and deserves our enthusiastic support. Our town desperately needs more affordable housing. All policy and regulatory bodies in this town, including the ZBA, need to be on the same page in encouraging the production of additional affordable units. We all need to be looking for ways to get to yes. So I urge the ZBA to approve Mr. Galasso's proposal without further ado. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Good evening. My name is Miranda Vogt. I live on Stevens Lane, and I'm a research assistant at the Marine Biological Laboratory in Woods Hole. So, as we've heard, everyone in this room knows that there is a housing crisis, but as long as we keep kicking the can down the road with these projects that are designed to improve the town's need for affordable housing, to improve the situation, as we keep kicking the can down the road, these problems keep getting worse, and the people who are paying the price for that are the people who are living and working in this town and the businesses that are supporting them. This proposal will be effective in providing both the year-round badly needed affordable housing as well as the seasonal workforce housing that we are also desperately short on. Parking concerns should not limit this project. Many of the residents in shorter-term rooms will not be driving, and as you've heard from local employers, their employees may keep their cars on site. Increased parking will only increase car dependency, and I think that really our town should want that most of the beautiful land in this town is not devoted to parking, where people will just leave their cars and is in fact used for other more beneficial things. I also think that we should be excited about the creative solutions, as others have said, that Michael Galasso has proposed, including the shared van that will be transporting people to their workforce, as well as the electric bicycles that you can rent. If I were to live there, I'd be very excited about the possibility of using those. I fully support this project and hope the board approves. Thank you.
I'll be really quick. I just want to offer myself as an exhibit. As somebody who was a postdoctoral fellow many years ago, and I'm going to offer my daughters as another example. When I started my postdoctoral fellowship, I knew that I could not afford a car. So I gave up my car, and I lived for 6 years without a car, taking mass transit, riding bikes, walking, whatever. And my daughters, who lived in Portland, Oregon, essentially did the same thing because they, A, we didn't give them a car, and B, there was no parking at their place of employment. So they took mass transit, they rode their bikes, and I'm just trying to tell you, this is doable. I know there's a lot of skepticism about this, but I want you to understand that a number of the people who would be living in this development are people who literally will not have cars, or even if they have cars, they'll probably want to park it at their site of employment and not use it. I just wanted to emphasize that, because I think for those of us who live in single-family homes in nice properties in Falmouth, we tend to lose track of the fact that, yes, there are many people who really need affordable housing, and they're literally willing to give up their own car in order to do that.
Ma'am, could we just have your name for the record, please?
Oh, sorry. My name is Ray Nishi. I'm a retired neuroscientist. I used to be the director of education at the Marine Biological Laboratory.
Thank you, ma'am.
I'm a year-round resident of Falmouth.
Any other public comment? We'll turn to board questions then. Mr. Ahmed, I know you have a few other comments you'd like to make. Do we have any questions from the board? Jerry?
No, thank you.
Right.
Well, we heard a rather extensive presentation from the building commissioner, which is at odds with the site plan approval of the planning board. So I would wonder if Mr. Ahmed perhaps has a response to that. I think it's an issue we have to kind of wrestle with right now.
Would you like to do that now, or?
Well, sometime. It doesn't have to be right now, but
We'll do it now, yeah.
I think it's an issue we have to resolve.
Mr. Ahmed?
The Mr. Cod bylaw does not say that the choice is 20 units per acre or a mix of residential units and non-residential uses that have the impact of no more than 20 units. It does not say that. It allows mixed-use development, including up to 20 units per acre, and then establishes a set of requirements to determine whether a site is suitable for what's proposed. Density of lot coverage, setbacks, building height, sewerage, yes, parking, which can be reduced under the bylaw. We have an existing building in this case. We ought to be able to fill it. The Mr. Cod bylaw specifically refers to non-conforming buildings as being usable in Mr. Cod mixed-use projects. The planning board has already approved, in its first Mr. Cod approval, the building at 464 Main Street that's proposed next to the Chinese restaurant, a project which would have 20 units per acre plus commercial space. The building commissioner has made a choice, a restrictive reading of the bylaw that is not necessary. He started off by saying that he supported this project. Some support. The Board of Appeals, the Planning Board has approved this project under Mr. Cod. They have approved, under Mr. Cod, this plan for 26 residential units and 45 commercial accommodation units and the small cafe. They've approved that. You can approve it. You have the right to reduce parking. You can do that. You should. And the parking has already been decided by the planning board. Or you can decide not to approve it, despite the need for this project, despite how good it is, despite our proposal that we will find 12 more parking spaces. I think the only reason you would cite for not approving it, well, you might say, well, we can't because we're only allowed to have what the building commissioner said. That's not what the planning board thinks. That's not what the Board of Appeal, what the zoning bylaw says. It doesn't say what he says. Make the right decision that gets us affordable housing and a good reuse of this building. If you have questions, if you want to talk about it further, I'm happy to do so.
Anything to follow up, Mr. Duffy?
Not right now, no.
Jerry?
I'm all set right now.
Where to start? I'll start with overwhelming support, which I think it has everyone's support, the concept, and nobody denies the need for this housing. But overwhelming support doesn't allow us to supplant the rules, nor would it any other rule or law. I mean, it just doesn't. We have this that we have to go by, and so do you, and it doesn't fit.
Your interpretation is different than the planning board's? Different than
Absolutely
mine.
it is, but that's
right.
fairly evident. But mine concurs with the book, with the planning commissioner. Is Jason Adams here?
No, he's not here.
No.
Would you
Well-
like him to be at a meeting?
Well, I mean, there's really no sense for me to ask you the questions here because you're not the professional or whatever, but as you can see, I find numerous things wrong or questionable about this traffic report. Right on the table here, vehicular trip generation, he only uses 41 units, not the 71. And I'm not going to go through the whole thing because there's numerous. And I've questioned previous. One here that I just can't help but comment on is that the mixed-use development wouldn't be any different than the nursing home. You're talking about 71 units with active people that work every day. They travel back and forth, as opposed to a nursing home where most of the people are confined to their beds. That comparison is just seriously not reasonable.
With 80 employees, by the way, coming to work every day, and their guests and suppliers and so on.
And
The figures in Mr. Adams' professionally prepared report are cited from Institute of Traffic Engineers studies and other sources. He will stand by his work, and I'm not surprised you don't agree with him, but it's the only professional report that we have.
well, through this entire report, he never cites once our bylaws. And I'm sorry, they apply. We're supposed to take the developer's expectations as opposed to the rules we have in the book. I mean, can you?
Requirement in the bylaw is 1 parking space per dwelling unit, which the planning board has reduced because of the overall amount of parking for the entire project.
We're not the planning board, Bob, and we're here to protect the abutters. That's our purpose. And we're also here to ensure that things, again, abide by this and everything else that he displayed on the table. And I don't see it.
Traffic for the small cafe, which in significant part will serve residents, but the traffic of that is at different peak hours probably than the residents. We have 59 parking spaces. We only have 71 units, residential or otherwise. The traffic report gives a lot of support for the fact that this type of housing will not require a lot of parking. And you seem to want to give no credit to the strategies that Mr. Galasso has proposed. If one can't get a credit and work with the town for dealing with these situations in parking, by doing everything that Mr. Galasso is doing in that particular location, then no parking reduction ever makes sense, but the Mr. Cod bylaw specifically provides for it. And for business uses, you have the authority to reduce parking.
Now,
So make the choice.
well, the Mr. Cod bylaw is flawed, and it needs to be, it's being rewritten at this moment. So it is flawed. You can laugh all you want.
You can choose one.
Come on, excuse me.
Sorry. And I don't know if this is true, but I just heard recently that the planning board has actually pulled their revision of the Mr. Cod bylaw because it's not going to be complete for this town meeting. But yet you expect us to apply it, and it doesn't apply for commercial accommodations.
Well, you have to apply the rules that there are, and we think you can have a choice. You may think you have no choice. We disagree. You have a choice to reduce parking requirements, to go along with the planning board, to agree that because of the strategies that Mr. Galasso is proposing, that you'll give this a chance. And if we can come up with 12 more parking spaces, which we don't think we need, but we will get to compromise.
You were supposed to have them when you came here tonight.
We've not been able to do it. Now, do you want to turn down this project because of it, or give us more opportunity to do it while you work towards a decision which I think you'd like to make? If we can provide 12 additional spaces in proximity to the project, does that change your mind about this?
We don't have them at first, so we can only deal with
Now, you can
solid
answer that
facts.
question.
We can't deal with supposition.
You can answer that question if you wanted to.
You could come back here with what we asked you to come back with before.
We will. And if we do that, will this project get approved?
We can't say that at this
Oh,
moment.
yes, you can.
No, we
Mr.
can't.
Zelinski.
Can I borrow that for a second? Members of the board, my name's Scott Zelinski. I'm presently on the select board, but I'm not serving in that purpose here. I'm a former member of this board. And in a couple of times, I'd like to correct some terminology used by some members. In my opinion, your duty isn't just to protect the abutters. This is also a board of relief, which means it's up to your interpretation. So I'd like you to keep that in mind as a citizen of East Falmouth, who's fully aware of what the needs are and what the rules say. So I would suggest that both sides come to some kind of agreement to help this move forward. But keep in mind that this is also a board of relief, not just a protection for abutters. Thank you.
I'm fully aware of that.
Thank you.
And it's a give and take, Scott. And
I just said that.
yeah, and there hasn't been any at the moment.
None.
I mean, nobody is opposed to this
I didn't get up here
concept.
to argue with you, Mark. I'm just stating a fact. We're not the guardians at the gate at the ZBA. All right? You know what the needs are. You know what you have to weigh out, and so does the other side. I'm just asking you both to consider that, to try to help this move forward. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you.
Do you have any other specific questions?
No, there's, as this thing is, it certainly can't get my vote. I mean, there's just too much in too small a space. I don't think it could have been demonstrated any better. And the give has to come from one side before it comes from this side. And, you know, I have an obligation here, and to continue kicking this parking issue down the road when everybody knows that it's an extreme issue in this town, all the way up and down Main Street. The butters have been here to testify as such. And I mean, we do have a box that it has to fit in, and currently it doesn't.
Mr. Zelinski.
With respect, there'll be no congestion if we have no workers to work on Main Street, Mark.
I understand that, but
Mr. Robert, I have a few questions, if you wouldn't mind.
I just have
Fine?
one more for Bob. I noticed in the file that there wasn't a restaurant calculation sheet either. You need to fill one of those out. do you not?
Actually did the calculation today, and it came to 125, although it depends on what type of utensils are used, percentage of takeout, and all of that. It's a Class 2 restaurant up to 175 under that chart.
I'm simply stating that
We came to 125. We
It
have
hasn't been put into
represented
the
that it
file.
would be a Class 2 restaurant. That's what the planning board has approved. And we would assume that the Board of Appeals decision would say it was a Class 2 restaurant or Class 1. I don't think we're allowed to have a Class 3, and I know we're not allowed to have a Class 4 restaurant in that zoning district. So it's 1 or 2.
Right.
So if you would like us to present a chart, we can do so, but we're telling you it will be a Class 2 restaurant.
My question was simply, is it required? And I believe it is, and it's not in the file at the moment.
I filled that out myself. So if it's not in the file, then it's just, but I filled that form out myself with the planning board.
It's not in the file. That was simply my question, and
We'll be happy to provide it to you.
Regarding the parking, if we have an approval, and would you be, some of the conditions I think that can make this, I realize that having lived in the city, sometimes you don't get parking when you have an apartment building. It's going to be I presume that it would not be a unreasonable condition that any lease for either the rental units or the commercial accommodation be very clear in a lease, no parking comes with this particular lease.
Sure, we actually think that there'll be a tremendous demand for these apartments and the short-term rentals.
Can you come up with a parking plan in terms of signage, how parking spots, the limited number there, are going to be allocated?
Sure, we could work more on it. We've given you a page of conditions about parking, but we'll do everything we can to satisfy your concerns. Keep in mind that we're at an early stage in this project. We aren't sure whether it can be financed.
That's actually going to be the next question. My primary concern is, yes, we have a crisis of affordable housing, we have a crisis for workforce housing. And I'd like to get into approval. But I want to make sure that the affordable units are going to be counted, that they're financeable, and there was concern raised by the abutter, and I've read the regulations about whether or not it's going to have to be a different ownership entity controlling those affordable units. Do you have, or can you get the board something from the state saying that, yes, they're going to be counted to SHI, yes, they're going to be affordable, and that we can move forward knowing that these 25 units are coming into our subsidized housing inventory? That, for me, is kind of the one concern I have. Parking, we can work with parking.
Just before Mr. Gilas speaks, there's an awful lot of work to be done with the state, and depending on the results of the working with the state to make this project work, this unique project work, there'll be a lot of work with financing agencies to make this unique project work. It has to work under our bylaw. The units that we've described, the 26 units, have to get on the SHI. We're agreeable to that. Not only has the planning board already said so in its decision.
And the reason for my question is, I understand, I've read the bylaw, is I just want to make sure that we're not back here 6 months from now if the financing falls through and then we're coming back with another proposal.
Financing doesn't work, this project won't get built. If the approvals from the state don't come, this project won't get built. We're trying.
So let me answer that, because I spend most of my time putting together the financing for these projects, so that's my responsibility, is to make sure we have the finance. And Gary said it, that's a very unique project. So one of the reasons why we asked the secretary, and thanks to our Senator Susan Moran, to get him to come down here and tour the facility, was that right now, if you look, most of the financing for affordable housing requires you to have a minimum of a one-year lease. Okay? So that's why all the Mr. Cod units, those 26, 27, will qualify for the SHI. We've had numerous discussions with the staff up there. Because of the uniqueness of this project, they're the ones who came up with dividing it into 2 different condominium units. I said that's ridiculous, because when we build affordable housing and we have retail on the ground floor, we have market rate units, and we have affordable units, we don't create 3 different ownerships for those. They're all under one ownership. But because this is so unique, and we've had the secretary comes down, he understands now that he's walked the facility, what we're trying to achieve. Not only does he understand it, but he is, along with the governor, who spoke to this today at the State House, sponsoring legislation to specifically provide funding for seasonal housing on the Cape and the Berkshires. That's pending in her I think it's $40 billion housing bill that she's proposed. So there is going to be money for this type of project. We won't need the money really until the end of next year, because we're going to spend, if we get through this process, we're going to spend most of this year doing our construction drawings, bidding out the project, getting ready to start construction. That's going to take us a good part of this year. So, I'm constantly looking at funding sources. We looked at, the governor announced a green bank, if you recall, a number of months ago. They haven't, $50 million, they haven't even set up the application for it yet. There's all kinds of funding sources out there. Now is the time to get as much money as we can. Plus, thank the town, thank town meeting, thanks who have put money into the Affordable Housing Fund here, and Ken Fish, who sort of administers that too. That's a good source of funds too, that we're probably gonna need for the acquisition part of the project. So I'm hoping I'm answering your question. I think that we will have a letter shortly. By the time we have something more solid with the parking, I believe we will have a letter from DHCD saying that those units, those 26 units, will qualify for the SHI. I don't doubt that we would. The only thing they're waiting for, it's not from me, they're just waiting for our town planner to get back to them with some questions that they had. That's what they wanted. And that was discussions this past week. So we are working with that. I know that was a concern of Board Member Murphy, so I wanted to make sure that we were addressing that, and we are. Unfortunately, we just don't have the letter yet. Part of it's the holidays, but we have them focused on it now, and they know it's important.
How many beds were in the original nursing home?
121.
I know that the abutters have raised some concerns about, restaurant operation and impact. Could you come up with a plan, or what is your intention about, or are you going to be opposed to conditions about reasonable hours of operation?
No,
The reason
we know we're right next
is
to
that
a
restaurants can be noisy, and I
and
just
we
wouldn't
know
necessarily
we're
want
right
to be
next
living
to a
above one if
church.
it's open till 1 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, right next to a church I'm a member of and everything. I know that would be an issue, so, reasonable hours wouldn't be a problem. And I know we're calling it a restaurant, but it's really more intended to be more like a cafe, more like a coffee with that type of establishment. So we're not looking at doing, dinners and sit down and white tablecloths and all that. We're looking at much more as a cafe operation.
In terms of off-site parking, Mr. Ahmed, how much time do you think you might need?
Well, we spent quite a bit of time. I think that if you would continue us for not the next meeting, but the one after that. Typically, we're here asking, can we be on the next agenda? Noreen knows that, but if we can be on the one after that, I'm pretty sure that we'll have it wrapped up. We're very close with a couple folks who are interested in helping us out. We'll have to pay for it, but they at least are willing to allow us to use their property for it.
Suzanne, do you have questions?
I do have a couple of questions. I don't know who can answer. Can you give me the definition of workforce housing? Please.
Probably not, Ms. Murphy. However, there is a definition of workforce housing in the zoning articles that the planning board is working on for the next town meeting, because the planning board is proposing an amendment to the senior care retirement community bylaw that makes it senior care retirement community and workforce housing. Now, if I've misstated that, it's because I'm just not 100% sure of what that's going on in that. But they actually have defined workforce housing in that, and so we could give that to you. You were concerned, and I think appropriately so, at a previous meeting, about, well, how do we make sure that this housing is serving workforce people? Well, whatever that means. And so some of the language in the conditions that I suggested tried to address that, but taking into account that there are fair housing and anti-discrimination laws, both for housing and for commercial accommodations, that have to be followed. So I think that we can agree that we would not advertise the properties, the units for short-term rentals. As you know, we're agreeing that they would be for not less than 30 days. The language that's been suggested about a renewal can be less than that is simply to say, well, you can't stay less than 30 days, but if it was a 45-day period you were there, you could renew for the shorter period. But we won't be advertising on Airbnb or any of the other agencies. And we can track, we can certainly ask people where they work, whether they're students, and keep that information. And as long as we're not discriminating based on an illegal form of discrimination, age, for instance, we'll be able to try to do what this is intended to do, to provide workforce housing, which I'm not quite able to define tonight.
Well, I did watch the planning board meeting. I think that workforce housing thing that they're presenting is related to that project on 151?
I guess so.
I think.
I don't know it.
When I watched the hearing, that's what it seemed like to me. I just didn't know if we had a definition. I didn't think we did.
So
Well-
the state uses an income level.
Oh, do
So
they?
what happens is we typically talk about incomes of 80% of the area median income or below for affordable housing. And workforce housing is the term they have attached to the next tier up. So that typically runs between 80% of the AMI to 120%. And what they feel is that that is an income group where they're not counted toward the SHI, there's not special provisions, but they also don't earn enough to pay market rates. So it's more attached to income, but though I think it depends how you use the term.
And that leads me to want to comment on something Mr. Glass said earlier tonight, which he hadn't said to me earlier. I wasn't aware of it, so I thought it was terrific new news. What he said was that all of the residential units would be rented either from 80% to 140. He's willing to limit the rent. Did you say 120?
120, yeah.
120, even lower.
The seven required units will be leased at 80%. Those are what's required by Mr. Carr. The other units that we are increasing above the minimum requirement could be leased at 80 to 120%.
And his calculation, if I recall, was that therefore 36% of the 71 units. Now remember, I've been careful all along to distinguish the residential dwelling units because that's what Mr. Codd allows with the short-term commercial accommodation units. But if you said 71 units and all of the residential units are restricted, as Mr. Galassa just said, that's 36% of the whole thing. It's pretty impressive to me.
And we are, because I think, Murphy, I think you brought this up before, we are still trying to get more units on the SHI than the 27. And the issue is, and I think I mentioned before, is that the rooms have a kitchenette without an oven. And DHCD said you need to put an oven in there. And so we are discussing that with them to see if we can get around that. SRO units typically don't have ovens. They have microwaves and two burners, cooktops. So I think the newness of this project, the uniqueness of this project has sort of shocked them a little bit. So they're still thinking about these things. And I think having the secretary come down here and tour, I think would shine some light on what we're trying to achieve with this project. So we haven't given up on that either. And as we mentioned before, this concept of creating, different condominium units, different ownerships for different parts of the project is something that we're going to fight pretty hard too.
My last question is, how many employees will you have on-site?
Just for on-site management?
No, all together, the cafe, the guy
Cafe will
driving the
probably have
van or
about-
girl?
The cafe would probably have somewhere around 8 to 12, all together, not at one shift per se. A cafe of this size, because our family has a restaurant in Mashpee, and we have a cafe similar to this in San Diego. So on a regular shift, there's probably about 4 or 5 people there. You come up to the counter, and, you have wait service and all that stuff, so somewhere around there.
Yep.
Yep. And as far as in the facility itself, there's a manager, assistant manager. There'll be at least 2 housekeepers that take care of all the common areas and everything, a maintenance person, so that's another 5 or 6.
Now, well, they are going to live there, or are they going to park there?
Some will live there, some will live there. Yep, the manager will live on site. Usually the manager and assistant manager on our facilities live on site.
And then a van driver?
And then there's a van driver. We've already got someone who's retiring from coaching at Falmouth Academy, who's approached me and wants to be our van driver. So.
It's a sweet job.
I won't mention his name, but, so, yeah.
You just gave it out.
We'll be a van driver and stuff.
Okay, I think that's all I have. Thank you.
Any questions from you, Noreen? Any follow-up questions? So you're looking for a continuation 2 meetings out?
Is that what we need?
Yes, I will suggest again, although there was opposition from board members at the last meeting, and it's not a commitment on behalf of the board for a final vote, but it would move the project along if the zoning administrator would take our conditions, indicate what other conditions required for an approval. Now, again, with the understanding we'll be submitting a parking arrangement. Otherwise, you're clearly not going to be able to make a decision at your next, vote a decision at your next meeting, and we're hoping you can do that soon.
You considering any reduction in units?
Mark, I think because of such a sort of housing crisis and demand that we have, and you hear it here from the audience and folks, I think it's not the right thing to do is to reduce units. I'd rather find some other solutions that maybe would make you feel comfortable and stuff. So if it's more parking or something else, I'm open to that. But I think we need the units. I think we need the units. I think we need as many as we can to count on the SHI for various reasons that you're facing. And if there's something else I could do, I'm open to that. But I think we need the units.
We have a date, Noreen?
So we'd be looking at February 1st or the 29th. I don't know which.
Day.
What was the dates?
February 1st or the 29th, first of the month or the end of the month.
First of the month, it's only 2 weeks away.
Yeah, I know.
I want that
It's a
letter.
little
though, too.
short.
I want that letter.
Yeah.
We really do want something for mass housing, too.
Okay. Yeah, let's just to be safe, to make sure that we know you think.
Yeah.
We'll- As long as our seller isn't listening tonight, we'll go to the 29th.
Can I ask
Yep.
No, are we sure that without a bathroom, they meet the definition of a dwelling unit to be subsidized? Is that an absolute at this point?
None of the dwelling units will not have bathrooms.
didn't ask that.
And it's only, right now, a minimum of 26 of the 71 different types of units that are housing units that will be on the SHI. They will all meet the requirements of the state and the town to be on the SHI.
I think Mark's question was,
My question
with the
was-
rooms, with the 44 rooms that don't have a full bath.
Are they going to are you sure that they're going to qualify
Well,
for
right now,
subsidy at this point in time?
well, qualified to be on the list,
No,
there's two things.
they won't.
No.
They aren't.
They don't have an oven, is what they told us.
It's only the residential units.
But they don't have a bathroom either.
Well, some of them have a half bath.
Some, I mean,
Some of them have a half bath, and there's common area bathrooms, and SROs are very typical, that don't always have full baths or full kitchens.
well, I'll just leave it at this. There's a long list of unanswered questions. It's almost like we really shouldn't have been here this evening, because there are so many unanswered questions.
Well, we wanted to make sure you didn't have any more unanswered questions, so we make sure we can get them all.
Yeah,
But we're working on it, and don't, unfortunately, this was between the holiday season, we weren't getting calls back and everything. I hear you, I hear what you're saying.
But I think it's
I'm not
important to say that
dismissing the need here, but you also need to abide, stay within the lines or whatever, and so far it's not happening, that's all. I certainly hope. I mean, I'm fully aware of the problem, but, overwhelming support doesn't override
Some
the
of the
bylaws, and I mean, we're here to give relief, but, as it stands, first off, there's too many unanswered questions.
And we'll try to answer as many as we can between now and the end of February, and some of the greatest projects ever developed are outside the lines.
Don't dispute that at all.
Is there a motion to continue to February 29th?
So moved.
Second.
Give that to Mr. Duffy. Second to.
Thank you.
All those in favor, please say
Aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? There's a continuation form we just asked you to sign. Mr. Rob, thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
There'll be a lot of people exiting. It's been 2 hours. We will take a brief recess to the sound of the next gavel. We are back. Thank you for everyone's patience. That included continuations. Next up, we have new hearings. First up under new hearings, we have 10123 Davis, trustees, 51 Homer Avenue, North Falmouth, an appeal of the building commissioner's decision to issue a building permit.
This too. We have Bruce M. and Lee M. Davis, trustees, 54 Pequasset Avenue, North Falmouth, filed an appeal with the Falmouth Town Clerk pursuant to MGL 40A 8 and 15 and 240-12.4A 1B and 240-11.3 and 240-11.5A, 240-10.2A1, and 247.3B of the Code of Falmouth appealing the building commissioner's decision to issue a building permit. The subject property is 51 Homer Avenue, North Falmouth, Mass. And I have a letter from Gary Street, the building commissioner, that I have to read. Dear Zoning Board of Appeals, this letter is in response to the abutters letter of their appeal of a building permit issued at 51 Homer Ave, Falmouth, Mass. I have spoken with him in person and on the phone numerous times to explain the correct interpretation of the Town of Falmouth zoning bylaw, resulting in issuance of a building permit for subject property. After a thorough study of this project in conjunction with Mass State Building Codes, the International Resident Code, and the Town of Falmouth zoning bylaws, the building permit was issued correctly for the reasons explained below. The items below are numbered to correspond with the items in the abutters letter. Number 1, in response to Appeal Item 1 per ZBL Section 240-11.5A, the proposed dwelling meets the height requirement because it is under 35 feet and does not consist of 3 stories based on the code's definition of the term story, in quotations. A, the height of the proposed dwelling is compliant because it is under 35 feet. The zoning bylaw for the RB district allows the right of a height up to 35. The height of the proposed dwelling is 32.52, well under the amount allowed by right. We measured the height from the upper railing, in parentheses, 1 foot above 6.62 ridge elevation to the average grade of 15 feet. This is the correct way to calculate height for this project. The result is 32.62. It's below our requirement of 35 and complies with 240-11.5 in height. B, the proposed dwelling does not have 3 stories because the lower area of the structure is not continuous across the building wall. In Section 243.3, there is a crucial distinction in our bylaw, and it is precise in its definition of story. Quotations, a partially or wholly enclosed floor of a building, a story, the ceiling of which is 4 feet or more above the average natural grade level across the building wall fronting all streets, shall be considered a story, in quotations. The house designed for 51 Homer does not meet the criteria for 3 stories because the lower area is not continuous across the building wall. It's only across a quarter of the building wall fronting all streets. That distinction is crucial to how we define story. This is an example of a 2-story house and complies with Section 240-11.5A maximum height, which allows 2.5 stories in this district. 2, in response to Appeal Item 2, a special permit is not required because the applicant has not increased the non-conforming nature of the structure. A, the rear yard setback is more compliant for the proposed structure. Section 240-11.4A2 in parentheses requires a rear setback of 10 feet for a detached single-family dwelling. The prior dwelling had a rear setback of 10 plus a little feet. The proposed dwelling has a rear setback of 11.4 feet. The proposed dwelling is set back 1.4 feet further than the amount required by the code. It is allowed as of right and is more compliant than the prior dwelling. B, the lot coverage is compliant and is allowed of right. Per section 240.11.3A, lot coverage for a dwelling in Residence B is allowed as of right up to 20%. The lot size is 11,158 square feet, and 20% of that number is 2231.6 square feet. The footprint of the building is 2226. The proposed lot coverage is therefore 5.6 square feet under the maximum allowed as of right. The proposed dwelling's lot coverage is allowed as of right because it's less than the maximum amount allowed under, as of right, under 240.11.3A. C, the non-conforming lot is exempt from special permit. Both sections 240.10.3B1A and section 240.10.3B1B3Is can provide exemptions for conforming lots. Even if 240.10.3B1A does not apply, section 240.10.B3.1B3I states that non-conforming lots with at least 20 feet of frontage on a street shall be eligible to apply for a building permit in the Residence B district if the lot also has more than 10,000 square feet of area. The site plan for this project shows it has over 100 feet of frontage on a street, which is over 80 more than the required for this B little 3I's exemption. It also shows a lot area of 11,158 square feet, which is 1,158 square feet greater than the minimum required 10,000 square foot for the B3I's exemption. Therefore, even if section 240.10.3B1A does not apply, this lot surpasses the minimum dimension requirements for exemption under section 240.10.3B1B3I's. This parcel complies with 240.10.3 and does not require a special permit. 3, in response to Appeal Item 3, the Town of Falmouth's Board of Health Conservation Commission reviewed and approved this project before a building permit was issued. The building permit for this project was issued on or about October 27th. Building Department records show the Board of Health reviewed and approved this project October 5th, 2023. The Conservation Commission approved this project after its review on around October 25th, 2023. The building permit was issued after these approvals. The Board of Health and Conservation Commission have approved this application. Therefore, the building permit was properly issued. 4, in response to Appeal Item 4, the appellants only raised one new specific issue in the form of an alleged inconsistency and do not state how it resulted in the building permit being issued in error. The only new issue appellants raise in Item 4 of their letter is that there is an alleged inconsistency in lot reference in the plans. The appellants do not state how such inconsistency resulted in the building permit being issued in error. The building department knew which lot the applicant was seeking to build on before issuing the permit, so any alleged inconsistency did not hinder proper issuance. Also, the addendum to the appellant's letter does not state how any alleged inconsistencies would result in improper issuance of the building permit. Therefore, it's not possible to respond to these other allegations of inconsistencies at this time. The conclusion: the building permit for subject property was properly issued. The building department takes each and every application very seriously, and we try to work with applicants and abutters as much as possible to explain this process. This office has discussed in depth this project with Mr. Davis, and any statement to the contrary is simply untrue. The owners of 51 Homer Ave presented a set of contract documents which meet the building code, energy code, sanitary code, fire code, and the town's bylaws. This building permit was properly issued. This board should affirm my decision to issue the building permit. Respectfully, Gary Street. And that's what I have from the building commissioner.
For the appellant.
Good evening, Chair Morris and fellow members of the Zoning Board. My name is Kelly Jordan Price. I'm an attorney at Hinckley, Allen, and Snyder in Boston. I'm here tonight representing Bruce and Lee Davis. Bruce and Lee Davis own the property located at 54 Pequasset Avenue in North Falmouth. They're both here tonight, and you'll be hearing from Bruce Davis a little bit later. Their son Matthew Davis is here as well. This matter concerns an appeal of the building permit issued to the Stimpsons relative to the property located at 51 Homer Avenue in North Falmouth, which directly abuts my client's property. And the special permit, they need a special permit in our position. The building permit allowed them as of right to raise and reconstruct a pre-existing non-conforming structure located on a non-conforming lot. I want to reference, we submitted some voluminous materials to the zoning board in November 21st, 2023, and then we supplemented those materials last week through a submission on January 9th, 2024. I'm not going to walk through everything in our written submission, but I do want to highlight some pieces. Among the main points I want to highlight tonight, and what we're really here about principally, is that we believe the building commissioner erred in issuing a building permit for the significant project and not requiring the applicant to go through what we believe is a mandatory special permit process before this board, given the fact that they're raising and reconstructing a pre-existing non-conforming structure on a non-conforming lot. So I have a PowerPoint up here, and I just wanted to, so with respect to this first slide, this shows the location of the property. The orange square shows where the home at 51 Homer Avenue is sited. Now, there was a home there that was built in 1964. They demolished that at the end of 2023 after they got the building permit, but that's the site of where the home is located. You can see this is in North Falmouth. You can see Inner Megansett Harbor, and you can see that it's near the Bourne town line. Now, 51 Homer Avenue, if you go directly to the right of that, that's 54 Pequasset Avenue, which is my client's property. The lot is small. It's a non-conforming lot. The bylaw for this particular district requires a 40,000 square foot lot. This lot is 11,158 square feet, so it's about a quarter of what the bylaw requires. It's also one of the smaller lots in this particular part of North Falmouth. Now, I think the history of the property is somewhat important to understand. The property previously consisted of both my client's property and the 51 Homer Avenue property. The homeowner decided to subdivide the property to create a smaller property for her son. And the properties have, over the years, there's actually a path that goes between the two properties. They have enjoyed this scale of a larger property and then a much smaller property down below, closer to the water. And as I said, there's a footpath connecting the properties that remains there today. Now, the proposed reconstruction would replace a 1964 dwelling that was 2,169 square feet. It was a 3-bedroom, 2-bath home built in 1964 with a 4,271 square foot, 3-story, 4-bedroom, 5-bath home. This would approximately double the size of the existing structure in addition to increasing the height significantly. Now, I want to just point out what's in yellow on this slide. That's land owned by abutters that I understand have all submitted letters to the zoning board in support of this appeal, and they're taking the position that the homeowners should be required to follow the mandatory special permit process for their project. Now, this is an aerial, actually, I guess I can see it here, of the location. And you can see, just to kind of, down closer to the water, you can see 2 smaller homes. To the right, kind of tucked back in, that's the property we're talking about. That's 51 Homer Avenue. My client's property is to the back left of that property that has the large porch and the white steps in front of it. So you can see, as I said before, these properties used to be one property. They were subdivided with the smaller cottage-type structure down, which was, and the properties have, which was housed the son, and the properties have enjoyed this scale throughout the years. In both, so if we also look at the 55 Homer Avenue property, which is to the left, has a similar history to the 51 Homer Avenue property. Both were built in the 1950s and 60s, and for 50-plus years, they were built after all of the other homes surrounding there had been built. The smaller homes were built on lots carved out of the larger lots, and they were to house family members. They were designed to be a much smaller scale and minimize any visual impacts the lots that they were carved out from would have from the construction. Now, as I noted earlier, the 1964 dwelling, 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, 2,160 square feet, including garage space, 2 stories or 20 feet 1 inches in height. Now, the proposed project, it's a 4-bedroom, 5-bath home, over 4,800 square feet, 3 stories, in a 4th-level roof deck. It's 33.2 feet in height, excluding the cupola and chimney projections. It's multiple levels or multiple decks on levels 2, 3, and 4. There's a 3rd-story office with an ensuite deck, including an outdoor shower. There's a 4th-level roof deck with a wet bar, a rear yard patio, fire pit, and retaining wall. This is significant upsizing and increase in the intensity of use on the site, approximately doubling the size of the structure. Now, with respect to what we have called in our papers Appeal Item 1, we're taking the position that the proposal exceeds the maximum stories allowed under the bylaw. This is a 3-story structure. I know that the building inspector has taken a position that it's not, but we submit that the building inspector is not applying the bylaw appropriately. The property is located in the Residence B zoning district. Section 240, 11.5 of the bylaw imposes a maximum height of 2.5 stories in the RB zoning district. I understand that the building commissioner, I know the letter was read a little while ago, sent the letter to the ZBA in which he contends that because what we refer to as a story is not continuous across the building wall fronting all streets, it cannot be considered a story. I submit to the board that that is not a fair interpretation of the bylaw. The bylaw defines a story as a partially or wholly enclosed floor of a building. The bylaw then sets forth an example of what will constitute a story. And it reads, "A story, the ceiling of which is 4 feet or more above the natural grade level across the building wall fronting all streets, shall be considered a story." What this sentence means is that in measuring a story, you look at the natural grade level across the building wall fronting all streets and then see if the partially or wholly enclosed floor of the building has a ceiling 4 feet above that grade. That sentence does not say that a story will only be considered a story if the story extends across the entire building wall fronting all streets, which is what the building commissioner is saying. Such a construction simply would not make sense. And such a construction, just to kind of put it in context here, would render this proposed structure a 1-story structure, because we'll look at plans in a moment, but there's only 1 level, the 3rd level, that's continuous across the grade. The plans clearly submit and depict 3 enclosed floors of the building. These are stories under the bylaw. The so-called basement and crawl space depicted in the plans both meet the definition of the story as their ceiling exceeds 4 feet above the natural grade of the building wall fronting Homer Avenue, the only street frontage for the project. The bylaw also contains a definition of half-story, something that I just want to be clear, this project does not have. A half-story, so to any contention that the 3rd floor is a half-story just won't be consistent with the bylaw. A half-story cannot exceed 1/2 of the area of the story below. The so-called 2nd floor in the plans, which we contend is the 3rd story, is more than 50% of the area of the story below. It's actually 125% of the area of the 2nd story, and therefore it can't be a half-story. Because the bylaw imposes a maximum height of 2.5 stories, the applicant would need to obtain a height variance for this particular project. Now, this is a drawing from the, or this is an architectural drawing that was dated August 29th of 2023 and was completed and submitted prior to public hearings on the project with the Conservation Commission and Board of Health. Now, you can see the basement level, which we submit is story 1. And the dotted line is the 14.7 foot listed on the civil drawing as the average grade of the proposed dwelling. The elevation of the second story is 23 feet, 8 feet 4 inches above the average grade, and 6 feet 5 inches above the garage elevation and what's labeled as crawl space. It's absolutely clear per the zoning bylaw definition of story that this structure is a 3-story structure and not a 2-story structure, given the way that the bylaw defines story. Now, just to kind of put this in context, this slide depicts the actual interior area of each story of this structure. So the red is the interior area. And then the purple is the garage, or I'm sorry, the blue is the garage, and the purple is covered deck space. But if you can look at the red, that depicts the interior area of each story. Now, the second main point that we have in connection with our appeal is that this 1964 home located at 51 Homer Avenue was a non-conforming structure on a non-conforming undersized lot. The 1964 home was non-conforming in at least two ways. It was a home constructed on an undersized lot, and it also violated rear setback requirements. Now, the proposed dwelling is more than 200% of the size of the existing dwelling. As the appeals court has held, a property owner may not intensify an existing nonconformity as of right. And I know one of the cases that holds for this proposition is cited in our paper, Shepherd v. Zoning Board of Appeals of Boston. As the appeals court further held in that case, and as has been held elsewhere, an increase in the size of an existing home on an undersized lot will intensify the nonconformity regardless of the extent to which the new house may comply with bylaw requirements, including setback and height. So when we look at the building commissioner's letter, when he talks about the rear setback, that's no longer non-conforming, it actually complies with the proposed structure, that's only part of the inquiry. You also have to look as to whether or not the structure is non-conforming as to density, and whether the existing nonconformity, which it is because it was a structure on a undersized lot, but then you also have to look at whether that nonconformity has been exacerbated. That nonconformity has been heavily exacerbated because the property is increasing to more than 200% what it was previously. Under General Laws, Chapter 48, Section 6, the applicant is required to obtain a special permit before the zoning board as the project increases the non-conforming nature of the structure given its sheer increase in size. Massachusetts law requires that the special permits process be followed. A review of the Falmouth bylaw also confirms this process. Section 240, 10.2A specifically provides pre-existing non-conforming structures may be extended, altered, or changed only by special permit from the zoning board. Section 240-2.2B sets forth certain exemptions from the special permit process, but this project doesn't fall within any of those exemptions. And I think the building commissioner essentially concedes that in his letter. It appears that he understands that the project would not fall within those exceptions, but then what he does is he cites to a completely separate provision of the bylaw, which concerns not non-conforming structures, but non-conforming lots, to claim that this particular project can be done through the building permit process. To be clear, the section that the building commissioner referred to concerns non-conforming lots, not non-conforming structures, and has no applicability to the matter at hand here. The building commissioner's interpretation would render a complete nullity the whole section of the bylaw that requires the special permit process to be followed for the alteration of a non-conforming structure that increases the nonconformity. So we submit that the applicant should be required to follow the special permit process in moving forward this process, and we request that the zoning board overturn the building commissioner's determination to order or to issue a building permit and to require the applicant to go through the building permit process. Now, in our papers, we also refer to what we call appeals items 2, 3, and 4. These cover a number of areas where we believe the project fails to comply with other bylaw provisions and statutory requirements, and otherwise reflects the fact that we do not believe that the building commissioner properly reviewed all aspects of this project before issuing the permit. In the interest of time, I'm not going to walk through all of those. We'll rely on our papers, but overall, we believe that this project has not been given the appropriate scrutiny that it requires, and that the applicant needs to go through the special permit process before this board. Unless the board has any further questions, I would like at this point to ask Bruce Davis to come up and address the board.
Anyone have any questions for council?
Yes.
Frank?
Council, at the time that this property was divided in 1964, was that the year?
Yes, that's correct.
Did the dominant estate, I'll call it Lot 44A, reserve any right or restrictions as to what the owner of Lot 44B could do?
No.
Did they reserve any right to approve plans for anything that was to be built on Lot 44B?
Not that I'm aware of.
So really, the status of these two lots, you say there's some kind of a special relationship between the two of them, but they're totally independent lots.
So, that's a fair point, and I appreciate that. I think and it probably goes more into the special permit considerations, and in terms of the, we believe strongly that a special permit process should be undertaken here. And then, as you know, once the special permit process, you look at the character of the neighborhood and whether this is substantially more detrimental. And the character of this neighborhood are these homes with these two smaller homes underneath that are much smaller lots than the lots around that support these larger homes in the area. So I think the history does go into the character of the neighborhood.
Right, so one of the features of this plan, the 1964 plan, it shows, there's a little, I guess it's your walkway. It's on the western, what is it, the southern side of the lot, and when I went out there to take a look, I think it's a cleared area, and you can see a pathway going down. Is that in active use by the Davises? Is this something they use all the time, or?
They use it all the time to go down. And Mr. Davis can certainly address this better than I can, but my understanding is it is used all the
I'm just trying to
time.
understand the relationship between the parties here.
Sure.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Anything else? Thank you.
So first of all, I'm Bruce Davis, 54 Pequawset Avenue, direct abutters to 51 Homer Avenue. I'd like to thank the board for hearing our appeal today. I've been coming to Megantic, this specific area, for the last 40 years. My wife, her entire life, her mom and dad, their entire lives, our kids, and these grandparents as well, their entire lives. We have deep ties to the area, and we love the community. Our backyard is where we live. We are year-round residents, and we're on our porch, in our backyard, outside 12 months a year, even today. We hoped to avoid being here when we learned that the house was being put on the market. We communicated with the realtors, the sellers, and when we learned the purchaser was an existing neighbor, we were grateful. We had a letter prepared to send to whoever the purchaser would be, and given the sale occurred after Labor Day, and the new owners rarely returned between Labor Day and Memorial Day, we sent the letter to them expressing both congratulations for their purchase and the desire to remain in full contact on future plans, presuming they would likely raise and rebuild on the lot. That letter, which was included in our appeal, actually I outlined many of the items discussed here tonight. We noted that it was a non-conforming dwelling on a non-conforming lot, and that we live and spend the majority of our time in our backyard. We tried to respectfully raise our concerns that if not considered together, the two homes would have significant negative impact on one another, and if that were the case, we would oppose the project. Our letter specifically said, quote, "We would actively oppose redevelopment plans that further increase nonconformances under the Falmouth zoning bylaw," end quote. They ignored the letter. They never acknowledged it to us, and we first learned about their plans due to the mandatory Conservation Commission's notification, which we received on August 4th, 2023. So beginning in August, I engaged in the permitting process with interactions with the Conservation Commission, the Board of Health, and the Building Department. I raised concerns in person and via emails. I attended the Board of Health public hearing, objecting to the 4-bedroom determination. You might recall the house was originally a 3-bedroom. It was sold that way. I met with the building commissioner and staff regarding proposed dwelling and code requirements numerous times. I reached out to town officials seeking assistance. All of this is well documented in our appeal. My request for a written statement as to why the proposed dwelling complies with the zoning bylaws went unanswered until 26 and a half hours ago when I received the letter from the building commissioner yesterday afternoon at 5 p.m. And the building commissioner's response, although lengthy, did not fully respond to our appeal, and the proposed dwelling does not comply with the zoning bylaws. Again, we wanted to avoid being here today. We were worried about the deep excavations into the bluff and killing our trees on our property, the removal of large-scale growth trees that buffer the homes, the undermining of our retaining wall, the impact to the coastal bank, and intensification and density of the use of the undersized lot, particularly impacting our views and how we live in our backyard. Most of my comments were dismissed or ignored. I was told by the building commissioner when pointing out the definitions of the story and height that while my reading was correct, he was going to issue the permit anyway because I had a big house, so I shouldn't complain, or, of course, I could appeal the permit. Since that time, I decided I would appeal the permit, and while I have much preferred not to, I feel strongly that the town should enforce the rules and the mission of its code. I've learned a lot about the code in this process and whether the defects and misses are accidental or intentional, they should be corrected. Our neighbors agree, and as you've seen, they've sent letters supporting this appeal. We're not opposing a new home. We just want it to fit in the character of the neighborhood and the parameters of the lot, the zoning code, health and environmental regulations. This photo shows the clear cutting of the coastal bank to reprofile and grade the site. There's no room to make the footprint of this house any bigger on the site. It barely fits as designed and wouldn't fit if it was correctly treated as new construction under Title V. I provided construction photos, which were included in the supplemental information submitted on January 9th. I reported to the appropriate authority when I observed variances and violations to the approved plans. Unfortunately, what we've watched happen is pretty much everything we were concerned about. The next three photos are before and after photos from the 1964 dwelling when it was still in place to around Christmas time last year while construction was underway. These were all included in the supplemental information that we provided, but we thought it would help understand the scale of this proposed project. So, in this one from my property, looking over the top of the 1964 dwelling, top of the peak of that roof, elevation 34. On the right side, the current construction. Top of that wall, where the arrow is pointing on the left side, is roughly elevation 22. From there, it goes up another 26 feet. 26 feet would put it near the dialogue box on the top right. Obviously, different seasons. Picture on the right is the footpath that parallels the property line. Top of the wall, foundation on the right side, 22 feet. From there to the top of the cupola, another 33 feet high, almost to the top of the trees that are on the top of that slide. This one from the footpath, looking at the backside of the 64 dwelling. It's same, for perspective, the same tree is in both photos. But there you can see the top of the wall, the foundation wall, elevation 22, and going up another 30, nearly 30 feet, 26 feet to be exact. So in closing, you've heard our concerns, arguments, facts as presented in our appeal. You've received abutter objections to this proposed project. The supplemental information that was provided, and all that it was summarized today. So we respectfully request the board to revoke the building permit, to require any new construction to meet the dimensional regulations of the Falmouth Building Zoning Code, specifically limiting the height to 2.5 stories. Require that appropriate zoning relief be obtained via the special permit because it exacerbates nonconformities, specifically increasing the density on a nonconforming lot. Condition future approvals on a revised septic system design that either meets Title V requirements for new construction, remains a 3-bedroom system, or seeks appropriate variances as required by Title V. And require further submittals be coordinated, consistent, factual, relative to the project, its scope, and lot-specific conditions. We appreciate the zoning board's time and consideration on this matter. Thank you.
Barry, you have a question?
Yeah, can you go back to the picture before? Where you have the foundation wall elevation?
Yes, sir.
The waterproofing on there, obviously it's been excavated away and it will be filled back in. The waterproofing indicates, plus or minus a small amount. The actual ground level, you have that as 21 feet. I see it as about 4.5.
Yeah, the existing grades in that area, the natural grade in that bank will tie in roughly to the area that's been weatherproofed. If you look at the detailed foundation maps, you'll see that those windows that are in the crawl space in this particular picture were supposed to be subterranean with a well around it. There will be no well around that window because the natural grade is well below that. This is a very steep section of
I understand,
property.
but that's been excavated.
Oh, yeah.
And then it will be put back in. The elevation would be measured from the ground, and the ground would be somewhat in correlation with the waterproofing. And it appears like, you're trying to tell me that
Well, this is.
4.5 feet is 21 feet.
No, elevation above sea level, not a.
Oh, well, that
elevation above
has
existing.
little or nothing to.
And this is the rear side of the lot.
I understand.
Yeah, so the concern we had with definition of stories.
Well, if you want to continue with the, using the sea level as elevation, I mean, how far is your house above sea level? I don't understand why that's even.
It's how it's measured on the drawing. Excuse me, stop. Thank you. Questions go through the chair. You have to be recognized, you're going to speak.
Like I said, it's not ground, it's from sea level. That's enough for mine. That's answer enough.
Scott, you have a question?
Yes, I do. Mr. Davis, your attorney before you presented some copies of the plans, and looking at this photograph on the board right now, there are boxes and there are comments written on these plans. Like, for example, in the lower right-hand corner, you have a box outlined in blue with some information. Who put that information there?
My son and I.
Are you an engineer?
I have a master's degree in engineering.
Well, are you a registered engineer?
No.
Okay. And on the previous drawings that your attorney presented, there are similar boxes, and those were done by you and your son?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Other board questions?
No.
Public comment? No public comment. All right. Board discussion?
We have the homeowner here.
I don't know.
Have they been noticed?
Tyler Franklin from Rubin Rubin on behalf of the Stimsons.
Oh, excuse me. I'm
Part of
sorry.
public comment. All right, thank you.
We just were recently retained, so I don't have the benefit of having digested all these materials. I think at this point, in fact, we just recently got, as everybody did, the building commissioner's interpretation. We find that to be reasonable interpretation of the bylaws. And we'd like to, I guess, get an impression as to how the ZBA feels like they're going to rule this evening, and if it seems like they have an inclination, I suppose, based upon the information provided, to grant the appeal and give the relief that's being requested, request a continuance for further opportunity to provide information that might be necessary for the ZBA's.
What was your name?
Tyler Franklin?
Tyler Franklin?
Yes.
Okay.
So at present, I don't have any substantively to present at the moment. As I mentioned, we were just recently retained a few days ago. So just want to get an opportunity to present here, acknowledge that we represent the client. If there's something that the ZBA may need for additional information in order for them to make their determination, have an opportunity to present that and continue this hearing. But if the ZBA thinks they have all the information they need to make a determination to deny it, then obviously there's no reason to continue. So thank you.
Davis?
We have this much information already.
I just want to address that request. Our appeal was submitted on November 21st, 58 days ago. Ample time for the owners to retain whatever guidance, assistance they need.
Speak closer to the microphone
sorry.
because
Yeah.
it's hard for people at home to hear you, and
No,
people actually do watch this.
I did. No, I'd like to just highlight that the appeal was submitted 58 days ago. And I believe that's ample time for the owners to retain whatever expert specialists they need. So I'm not in favor of a continuance.
Board discussion.
I'm going to uphold.
I didn't hear what you said.
Board discussion.
I'm going to uphold.
The building commissioner.
Yes.
I have to say, I mean, we have this much information. It fully took me an hour in the driveway to go through this, and it wasn't enough time.
Only an hour?
Yeah, that's whatever, I had a medical appointment, I was in a hurry, and it wasn't enough time. But, you know, and through, I did see one thing, and, God, I wrote a note here, sorry. Oh, yeah. In there regarding the views. And in Mr. Davis's explanation, he said that this appeal was, in particular, the impact on the views and vistas. And we have been through this. Views and vistas are in 3 different spots in the bylaws. And the only time this board can give any relief is when the setbacks are less than required. And that's the furthest thing from the case on this. Also, there was an issue of density, and I think it was actually referring to bulk, which is what we calculate and we require. And on that, also, I see nothing that we could do, because as far as bulk is concerned, you could literally fit 3 of these houses inside Mr. Davis's house, and it would be part of the bulk calculation. I am going to vote to uphold the building commissioner's decision.
Duffy?
I'm inclined to affirm the building commissioner's decision. I think the biggest point here is whether or not the previous structure, the one that was built in 1964, was a non-conforming structure. Now, there's a plan prepared by the owner's engineer that shows that the rear setback is 10 plus or minus feet. That's not good engineering practice to have 10 plus or minus feet. But I think it's within the building commissioner's discretion to accept that as 10 feet if that's what he wants to do. Now, since it conformed to zoning as far as the rear setback is concerned, it is not a non-conforming structure or dwelling. And you get to the requirement for a special permit is triggered by a non-conforming structure. If it conformed to zoning, it's not non-conforming. The fact that this is a small lot, much of which has been made of by Mr. Davis, is of no importance. The question is whether or not the lot is buildable. And it is buildable under Section 240, 10.3B 1A of the zoning bylaw. A non-conforming lot is buildable and may apply for a building permit, says nothing about a special permit, but may apply for a building permit if it is shown on the plan as of 1/1/1981, this is true, 1964, there's no issue of common ownership and none have been raised. It has a minimum of 7,500 square feet, and this is 11,000 square feet, and it has 50 feet of frontage, and this has more than that. So a conforming building, I think they can raise and reconstruct this by building permit. They don't need a special permit. That's my opinion. Thank you.
I'll just add one thing to that.
Sure.
The question of the 10 feet plus or minus, although not what we prefer, because we've gotten very particular, at least I have, that would still fall within the definition of de minimis, and again, I concur with Attorney Duffy, and I would vote the same.
Jerry?
I concur with the previous comments that.
Someone want to make a motion then?
Move to approve affirm the decision of the building commissioner.
There's a motion to affirm the decision of the determination of the building commissioner. Mr. Duffy, is there a second?
I'll second that.
Mr. Finneran, discussion on the motion? All those in favor of upholding the building commissioner's determination, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? 5-0. Thank you.
Give me all this stuff.
Pass it down. Suzanne, would you want to
Mark,
pass
you want me
things
to
down?
take that?
Huh?
Let me take it? You take that pile?
You have a dolly?
That muscle's been moving.
Next up, we have hearing 10523, McGough, 46 Miami Avenue, Falmouth, requesting a special permit to remove the existing deck and construct an addition exceeding 20% lot coverage by structures.
All right, let's see what we got here. We have Megan McGough, 50 Pennock Road, Ashland, Mass., applied to the Zoning Board of Appeals for a special permit pursuant to sections 240.11.3A4 in parentheses of the Code of Falmouth to remove the existing deck and construct an addition exceeding 20% lot coverage by structures. The subject property is 46 Miami Avenue in Falmouth.
We have to do our job,
And from town departments, we have Board of Health says that this property is sewered. Let's see, engineering. From engineering, I have, this application was reviewed for impacts to public rights-of-way and public utilities. Miami Avenue is a public right-of-way in this area. No alterations are proposed to the right-of-way. Any changes within the right-of-way would require filing a permit with the engineering division. 2, any connections or alterations to public utilities will require permission from the appropriate town department. 3, the project must not direct any stormwater runoff to public property, abutters, or public rights-of-way. 4, dry wells are provided for the new roof as we typically recommend. 5, erosion controls are shown on the plan and appear to be mostly adequate to protect abutting properties and public rights-of-way, and construction entrance and silk sack for the town's catch basin in Miami Avenue should be added. We defer to the board if the plan should be revised, or if these omissions can be required by a condition. We recommend the following condition be included. Quotations, construction of this project shall follow the town's soil erosion and sediment control standard conditions. Document can be found on the Engineering Division's page of the town's website. References to the Department of Public Works Engineering Division shall be replaced with Zoning Board of Appeals, who will be the permitting authority for this project. 6, based on aerials provided by Nearmap, it appears that the existing driveway was constructed sometime between March 30th, 2021 and October 2, 2021. And he has screenshots in here. We do not have the record of a driveway permit or street opening permit for this work. This property was transferred 6/25/2021. However, the current owner was one of the grantors to which this property was transferred in 2004. We recommend that the applicant file a driveway permit with the engineering division for this work so that we may inspect it for compliance with town standards and have any deficiencies corrected, so that it can be considered a permitted driveway. We defer to the board if this matter should be addressed prior to the special permit. That's from engineering. Planning has no comment. Conservation. The Conservation Commission approved the above referenced project through a negative determination under a request for determination of applicability. The plan of reference is attached, and it shows the revised LOW and 2 proposed trees. The only discrepancy between the site plan and architectural plan is an egress proposed from the addition to the front yard, but this is something that the conservation staff can approve administratively. No comment there. And what else do I have here? I think that's it. And that's what I have from town.
We have some letters today.
Yep. Comments, we have 3 letters of comments or concerns, 2 in opposition, none in support. That's what I have.
For the applicant, good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board. My name is Jonathan Poloni. I'm an attorney with Senni & Associates in Brewster, appearing before you tonight on behalf of the applicant, Megan McGough. This application is for a special permit to exceed the maximum 20% lot coverage by structures. Looking at the site plan here, this property is located in the RC zoning district, and it's currently improved with a single-family dwelling shown as the existing house. It is an undersized lot with 9,910 square feet, and the existing house is relatively small. It has a deck on the north side, and there's a small shed in the back. With the addition that we're proposing, the shown there in the square on the north side of the building, will increase the lot coverage by structures to 24.48%. And that does involve removing the existing deck because that lays within the footprint of the proposed addition, and also removing the existing shed, which will be taken off. The plans that I brought to you this evening and gave to you, I apologize for not those being small, 8.5 by 11. It was all I had available to print. But that just includes, it's the same basic plan, except for 2 variations. For one, it now has the notation on it that says the existing deck is to be removed. And in fact, the existing deck has already been removed. And I've discussed that with the building commissioner. We'll be able to address that at the time the building permit is submitted. The other thing on this plan is shows the 2 trees that are on the amended plan that was submitted and approved by the Conservation Commission. So all that information is now on the plan. With the addition on this property, the house will meet all the required setbacks. It'll be 11.8 feet from the northerly side lot line and 13.7 feet from the rear lot line. There are dry wells shown on this plan, which there are 5, to handle the roof runoff created by this new structure. And we'll hopefully also address any other runoff coming from the existing dwelling as well. In terms of the structure itself, it's going to match the existing ridge height of 21 feet of the existing dwelling. The addition runs from the rear of the lot to the front of the lot. The existing bedroom, the existing dwelling has 2 bedrooms, even though it's classified as 3 bedrooms on the assessor card. There's a bedroom on the first floor, and then there is a bedroom on the second floor of the existing dwelling. There's going to be a bedroom added in the rear of the proposed addition. There are other areas, a utility room, a workshop space, and at the front is a 2-car garage. The second story is going to be mostly storage. And in completeness and in fairness to the board and to the abutters, it may be some future plan to add a bedroom up there or some office space or something. But it's also a fact that in terms of the foundation for the addition, there's no basement space being provided here, which I think is the reason why the storage space is being put above. In the existing dwelling, there is about 6-foot basement underneath that, but nothing under the addition, if that helps kind of explain that. This is also a property that's on the municipal sewer for the Little Pond sewer area. So it's limited to 4 bedrooms, but it can have 4 bedrooms by right through the sewer. There's not any impact on nitrogen because of the municipal sewer system. So if she decided that she wanted to have 5 bedrooms up there, she would have to go to the select board and get approval for that. In terms of the special permit criteria, I think we are appropriately within the 4 requirements there. The bulk calculations worksheet that was submitted shows that what's proposed fits within the existing character of the neighborhood, both in terms of height. The existing dwelling was 1 story. We're continuing that height But if there's any question about stories, there's plenty of other buildings in the neighborhood that are 1.5 and 1 3/4 stories. And in terms of size, there are several other properties that exceed the 20% lot coverage. So it's not something that stands out in terms of the neighborhood. The adjacent property to the north, it's not entirely shown on this property, but it may be shown in some of the pictures that you have, sits at some elevation from this property, which minimizes to the extent that there could be any shadowing from the addition that's being put in. And because of the ridge height is being maintained, I don't think there's any impact from that on views and vistas. This is also property that's located on the west side of Miami Ave, and all views are really directed in the other direction over to the pond. So I don't think it has an impact there. And as I said, it's on the sewer, so there's no impact to nitrogen. As is proposed, we feel this meets the special permit criteria, and we'd ask that you approve the application. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Questions from the board? Start with you, Susan.
Actually, if I can add one thing,
Certainly.
which I wanted to start out with, we have addressed the driveway permit with DPW already. We have the permit, it's been approved.
Coming
so-
right out. You knew.
Yeah.
That's what I was
Other
going to
questions?
ask about the driveway permit. And from the letters that we've received, you're going to have to really adhere to the stormwater management. That's what the concern
Well,
is.
I think that's the reason why the dry wells are proposed on this plan, is to address all that. That's in the regulations. I'm not exactly sure what's going on in terms of the runoff from the road. I know there's a catch basin out in the street
Right front,
right there. But I think certainly the intent is there shouldn't be any contribution from this project.
Can you, I didn't get a chance to look at the letters, they weren't scanned. Can you just give a brief synopsis of the three?
I have the,
Two in opposition, I think you said 3 concerns.
yeah, the concern is one concern is the person that's to the south, Cool Breath. He says he's in favor of this. I'm just going to read them all, whatever. I'm unable to attend. His only concern is runoff. That's the first letter. This person, Christopher Mansfield, no address that I can see, so I don't know where he's located. Oh, no, he doesn't give his address. He writes in oppose of granting the special permit for construction, it would exceed permissible lot coverage by impervious buildings in the RC. He worries about water overflow. The applicant apparently cut down a lot of trees. He wants us to deny, so he's more of a water issue too. I'm gaining for that. Another person writes, let's see if I can find an address on them. Carla, 65 Miami. She writes today to oppose the granting the special permit. She almost writes exactly the same thing the other guy wrote, almost exactly the same thing. They are experiencing increased water levels from the pond. That's not related to this. She also speaks of heavy, she almost has the exact same verbiage as the letter in front of her. And let's see what else we have. This one's from 47 Miami. We've experienced increased runoff through our property over the past year. It has been observed that grade changes in the adjacent property have occurred when the driveway was shifted. So they're worried also about runoff and grade change. And those are my letters. That's why I asked about runoff.
I have no other questions, Mark.
I really don't have any questions. I went out and visited, and they were satisfied. I understand the water concerns. The level of the pond is more due to the town's lack of maintenance dredging than anything that could be contributed by this house. And I have to say that they've gone beyond what would be asked of them, because they intend on putting dry wells in the back of the existing structure. So if anything, with properly constructed dry wells, there's going to be less runoff from this, although it is it's obviously an issue because you are in the hollow. And other than that, nothing sucks up water more than hydrangeas. You might want to throw a few in the front.
I'll pass that along.
They're amazing. But other than that, as I say, you've gone above and beyond and than what we could require. So I don't see any, and obviously, you know, you look at the size of the existing house, just a matter of time before, I mean, it's, for that neighborhood, it's a shoebox.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, there is a comp sheet here. I don't know if everyone had a chance to look at it.
Yeah, but you just gotta look at the house, you know?
Questions, Frank?
Yes, Mr. Poloni, the driveway is crushed stone. Is it pervious surface? Because yesterday it was a freezing day and it felt kind of hard underneath my feet, but will water drain into that, be sucked up by the driveway, or is it gonna sheet off?
That's a question I'd have to ask the engineer. I'm not exactly sure what the materials
Well,
are
it's crushed
proposed.
stone, I mean,
Yeah,
you've seen that, right?
yes.
Okay.
It's fairly compact,
Is it
but
gonna
it's,
stay the same?
I believe it is, yes.
No paving?
No
I
pavement?
don't believe there's going to be, unless PW wants it to be paved, but I don't, no, that's not the
No,
problem.
I don't think they will, but,
Yeah.
right. That would be a source of runoff if you paved it. That's-
Right.
Would you mind a condition that it not be paved?
It is a question that I would like to ask my client first, but I don't really have an objection to that, no.
How about if they do pave it, they do additional deal
Additional
with the water
drainage,
at the edge of the road?
that, I think that makes sense. Yes. That would be agreeable.
Between the two, I think they've gone, well, because you're never, it's in a hollow, you're never gonna take it all, but,
Right.
So I think in the engineering department typically looks at gravel as being pervious.
yeah, oh, absolutely it does.
Even though when it's compacted, obviously, it
And
drains less
freezes up.
well, but they technically refer to it as pervious.
Yesterday, it was as hard as a brick. It may have something to do with the fact the temperature was 22.
So was everybody, so was everybody's front lawn, so was the beach.
Jerry, do you have any questions?
Are you proposing any parking on the street, Miami? At least there's one letter concerned about.
Right. No, I read that letter, and I'm not proposing any street parking. I think actually this proposal with the garage and the size of the driveway that is there, there's adequate parking on the property
So
for
then you
cars.
wouldn't be opposed to a condition, no parking on the street?
I mean, I don't think it's necessary for myself. I
Can we
think
do that?
the town,
It's a public road.
Public.
The only
Oh, okay.
condition
I see what you're saying.
is 25 feet from an intersection, and that's not even abided by in this town, but I don't think we can do anything else.
Does the select board have to approve?
Select board could restrict parking on streets. We
They
have
can
we
look-
don't have that power.
It's not up, not up.
They can, if you need to build a parking space in the street, then it requires a
license.
license from the selectmen, but just to park your car there does not.
Okay. I see. Yep. Thank you.
thank you.
Talk to me for just a brief moment about the storage room.
Sure.
Perhaps for future plans. I mean, looking at the blueprints, clearly you're allowed 4 bedrooms by right. There are a couple rooms, I think it says office or workspace. Clearly, it's got privacy, it would meet the definition of a bedroom. I guess the concern down the road is that that's somehow going to get converted into a 5th bedroom or 2 bedrooms. What are their plans in terms of, what are they looking to do with these storage room? It's got rafters, it's got, you know, that could be a bedroom suite up there, private stairs and such.
Yeah, I mean, it's,
Right?
I'm not denying what it looks like. I mean, that's it, right there. Those are the plans. I think that's a kind of a bit of, you know, if you're here for a special permit to build out an addition, you don't want to build half of it and then come back and
No, I
build the other
understand.
half of it.
We're going to probably end
You
up
wanna-
conditioning that if there's any, that's going to get developed into something that you may have to reduce or case in one of the other bedrooms to reduce it, so.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a problem with any kind of trying to get clarity on the future use of the second floor area. There's no plans for it right now, and the conversation that I had is exactly how I explained it, with the lack of storage below, which the existing basement doesn't really provide enough space for that, and so the space it's going up instead of going down. And beyond that, there's a possibility that the space may be converted in the future when funds are more available. But I think that's, at that point, we would be coming back for a variance to clarify how that space is going to be used. I think that
You
there
wouldn't
are
require a
a lot of other
variance.
safeguards.
It's by right anyway.
Well, for 4, yeah. The 4 bedrooms.
Yeah, I think, the problem is you're showing 3 bedrooms labeled, right? But
Yes.
it's likely, albeit that the Board of Health deferred commenting on this, that the workshop on the first floor would technically constitute a bedroom under the definition of space and privacy.
I see.
So I think what we'd be saying to you is if there's a future plan to put a bedroom or a room in the upper area that could constitute a bedroom, so even if you call it an office, if it meets the criteria of a bedroom, it's still going to affect how they count for septic. So at that point in time, in order to be able to finish out that area, you may have to case an opening somewhere else to remove privacy
Yeah.
so that it's not a bedroom.
Naturally. Yep.
So that would probably be a condition if the board.
But
Yeah.
it's a sewer, so there's only 4 limit.
Right,
four
so they're,
bedrooms.
right,
bedrooms,
but what I'm saying is if they have what would be technically 4 now, if they finish something out, they could be exceeding that.
Yeah.
Well, when you look at the amount of letters we got and how tight the neighborhood is, they'd have a pretty hard time constructing another bedroom without everybody knowing about it.
There'd be a lot of parking on
I
the street,
don't-
I'd imagine.
I think Jim's condition is,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
Follow-up questions? Public comment?
My name is Linda Bullard, 47 Miami. I'm directly across the street from 46 Miami. I wrote one of your letters. I don't know if you have the photographs that I sent as well. They removed every tree from their front yard, probably 12 of them, without a con permit. I'm not sure what they gave to conservation. When they moved their driveway last year, about 15 months ago, the old driveway used to be in front of the catch basin. I cannot get out of my driveway when they are parked on the street. I have to do a 3-point turn to get out of my driveway. She has so many cars there that there's no way that the garage that will hold 2 cars, maybe 2 cars in front of that garage. She has 7, 8 cars there in the summer. So if she builds something this large, the intention is going to be to put more bedrooms in. I don't know what she's planning on doing. I don't believe, I oppose having it go this large. It needs to be smaller. She needs more driveway parking. That's all I have to say about that. And as far as the runoff, I have a video that I was going to put on my iPhone to show you what I get. I literally have a stream that goes down my street into Little Pond. And when she raised her property, without a permit probably, because I just realized that she applied for her driveway permit on January 9th. She moved that driveway a year ago. I've been working with the engineering people to fix the water runoff on our property. So this is just gonna add to it. And Michael has the video, and we can probably put it up there to see it, but I don't think she knows how to do it. You just go on iPhone?
No, I do. You just can't. You need to put it on a USB drive in order
Oh,
to
I
get
see.
it from point A to point B.
Yeah, okay, well, I don't have it on USB.
But they're actually going beyond what's required to deal with the runoff.
They
so-
haven't applied yet. They just recently applied. They've already done the work.
No, they're putting dry wells behind the existing house, which we can't even condition them to do.
But I don't need it
So they're going
behind-
above and beyond to deal with the water that's on their property.
But I need it in the front of their property.
Right,
That's
so-
where the water's coming, is from the front of their property onto the street, onto the catch basin at 46. It crosses the street to 43. It floods out 43, and it goes into 47.
Right, so part of their pulling the driveway permit, the engineering department will go out and inspect and make sure that that circumstance is corrected.
And the reality is, the majority of that water that does run down the street comes from other properties and happens to just, you know, go to the lowest point, and which is what that property is.
Right, but if you see the Google Maps, how it used to be with all the plants, it went down and then around. And now that they've moved it and raised it, they're adding more water to the street.
I don't see how that's physically possible.
If you look at maps or the pictures I sent you, you can see how it's above 3 inches where it used to be.
It's just, that's a hollow there, there's a big dip in the road, and water's coming from everywhere.
Everywhere.
Well, the road goes this way. So 46 catch basin catches the water, shifts it over to 43, and then it goes into the system. What's happening is, I've been working with that department, engineering, for about 2.5 years. They've already put some drainage on top of both sides of the hill to catch some of that water. But ever since she raised her grass, I'm literally getting more water. And of course, she didn't go to engineering to do what she did.
Probably didn't have to, but.
You didn't have to.
Did the, are the drains on the street maintained regularly? Are they
Yes.
cleaned out?
Yes,
And you said there's 6 or 7 cars parked there
yes, in the summertime, yes.
regularly?
Well, but not now, because she's in Florida.
No, but I mean, how many days a week are there 6 or 7?
In the summer, all summer long, her kids come home from college, she has 3 kids.
They're her kids, is she renting out rooms?
No, these are her children. And my problem is, I can't get out of my driveway. I can't even back up my trailers into my driveway. I go next door, can you move your car? They give us an attitude. So that's because she moved her driveway from for the catch basin all the way to the north side of her house.
Probably, okay.
Which used to be the driveway. But the Mike Bullard, 47.
Would you just come up to the microphone, sir? Thank you.
Mike Bullard, 47 Miami Ave. So we don't oppose this. We think it's going to be a good addition to their house. We understand all that. But we're getting damage from the runoff. Now, whether it be coming down the street or whatever, but the past 3 storms that we've had has shown the impact from across the street, giving it more water into that catch basin on their side, and which moves the water in the catch basin to the catch basin on our side, and that's when it goes, it funnels down our property into Little Pond. So Little Pond's getting damaged from the runoff that we know that we've all been trying to bring Little Pond back to life. And, I mean, that's a situation that we're trying to take care of with the town, but these are just concerns that we wanted to bring out about how we're getting the impact of the runoff from, additional runoff from this project. But other than that, I mean, the project looks great, but I think the engineering part of it for water really needs to be addressed, because my backyard is literally going into the pond, and the runoff has a lot of I have a video of it, and I can show you exactly what's going on, but I can't get it up here.
Is Miami Avenue a public way or a private way?
It's a public way.
Public way?
Right.
And honestly, I understand you have a problem, and it can be all over town. But if you've been
True, but
dealing with
right now, we're talking about the problem with us
Yes,
right
but-
now, and what's their impact. We're just bringing this to your attention, so you know where we're coming from. You talk about abutters, that you protect the abutters. Well, I think the engineering part of it needs to be looked at with the water to be addressed to with this project moving forward.
No. You just stated yourself that you've been dealing with engineering with this problem for 2.5 years, which predates anything that they've done. So it's unfortunately, the place is in a hollow, and it's an existing issue. I mean, it sounds like you really need another catch basin on that street, but, I mean, the list is long. I mean,
Yeah.
we need stop signs, we need road work all over town. And like I said, if you've been dealing with this for 2 years,
And this has been.
Oh, we've
only
been
in the-
dealing with the runoff for a long time. It's just exasperated in the past year from the ground being lifted up a little bit next door, that's all. So,
I can say
I
that.
would like to be there when an engineer would come over and look at it, so I could be there with them to explain it to them, how this is all going off.
I'm going to interrupt just for a
That's-
second on a point of order. It's 9:30. We'll
Yeah.
need a motion to continue on. Is there a motion to continue, and to what time?
I don't think it's necessary.
I'm getting ready to wrap this up anyway.
Excuse me, to be clear, not the hearing, the business of the board.
Oh, well, yeah.
Move to
You mean
continue
we're not done yet?
to the completion of this.
Well, we have additional,
We have-
we have open meeting
Open
absence as
meeting
well.
items. Another 10 minutes.
All right, so
10 o'clock?
10 o'clock.
In a second. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Let's vote.
Prefer 10 out again.
I pretty much have said what I've had to say as far as that concern goes. Okay?
Any
If I can
follow-up
just-
questions from the board?
I just want to follow up that just real quickly. From my perspective, what I'm hearing, it sounds like there's some existing conditions that are happening right now, but this is prior to this project being built. The project being built will include putting in the dry wells, and I would expect that that would address any increases that are coming from this property. The intent of the dry wells is to contain any additional runoff that's being contributed by the impervious structures.
Is
that
it
are-
possible to shift the driveway so that these folks can get out a little easier? Okay.
This is the driveway locations where they are. I mean, I think what her issue is that people are parking on the street, which I can sympathize with because I run into the same issue at my house. So I don't know that it's the location of the driveway. I think it's people parking on the street. And maybe it's the width of the street. In my opinion, it's the width of the street that is the problem with backing out. So I think there's a limit to how much this applicant can take on to solve all these problems, but I think we're clearly trying to do that. To the point about the driveway, if you wanted to add a condition about if the driveway became impervious, they would have to have some kind of drainage. I mean, those are fine conditions. We're committed to addressing these problems. I just feel like with what's proposed, those problems are being addressed.
And we are going to do that, condition it if the driveway is paved or it becomes impervious. But I mean, as far as the parking issue is concerned, and I always forget the name of the stuff, but there's the concrete mesh
Pervious pavers.
reinforcement like Jerry has on the right side of his house that would allow you to park on the lawn when and if it ever became an issue. And I don't know if we can condition it, but in the sake of harmony in the neighborhood, you might want to just keep that in mind.
I will keep that in mind.
And it works very well. You can't even tell that it's there at Jerry's house, and yet it's still sound enough to park a car on.
No, the pervious pavers.
Pervious pavers,
Impervious,
right.
yes, there you go.
You know, maybe the applicant can make an effort to not block the neighbor's driveway so that can,
I will pass those concerns on.
The board have sufficient information.
I do. Motion to close.
Motion to close. Is there a second? Second. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Hearing is closed. No more testimony will be taken. Board discussion.
I'm all set with this. I do think we need to condition it, but I'll make a motion to approve the conditions.
I'll second that.
Motion to approve with conditions made and seconded. Findings?
Findings, let's see. It's in an RC zone, overlay Little Pond, flood zone AE 14. Existing is 10.9 over 14.7. Proposed is 24.8 over 27.7. Height's the same, Seward. Conservation gave a negative. There is a comp sheet. We did have the driveway to deal with. That can be under conditions, I assume. And that's what I have. Public road.
Sewer, public road, 3 letters of concern, 2 letters of opposition. Let's see.
99,
Two people spoke at
10
the
square
hearing.
foot Yes, people spoke at the hearing.
All concerns are about runoff,
And parking.
parking. Conditions?
Conditions. Let's start. Let's do the driveway conditions at the engineering department.
All engineering concerning soil erosion and
Yeah.
stormwater management need to come
And
in.
then you may want to add your own for the pavement.
Continues to be impervious. I mean,
Just be
pervious.
the driveway must remain impervious.
Pervious.
Pervious, excuse me. Capable of letting water pass through.
No
Or
other,
they
no other
deal
structures.
with the runoff in some fashion.
No other structures.
No other structures?
Do we have one for the space above the garage? Any condition on that?
Must remain at 4 bedrooms. If the storage area is going to be used as a bedroom, they will need to come back or make reductions in other rooms, other bedrooms.
Is that okay worded like that, do you think, Noreen?
Other conditions?
Anything else?
So they are removing the shed, so
Yep.
I guess I would
Yes.
suggest that you have a notation that it'll be removed and not replaced. And then where the total lot coverage by structure is going to be essentially at the max, it's probably valuable to get a certification that that is complied with and not exceeded.
That's fine.
See if there's anything else. Obviously, you'll have to comply with any wastewater requirements. And sure, I guess the only other thing is complying with whatever engineering requires.
All town referrals incorporated in the conditions.
And they had a negative determination from wetlands, right?
From Concom, yeah.
Yeah, I think there was just an administrative approval that they need to go back for afterward.
That's it.
Anything else?
For
All those
me.
in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Thanks.
Next, we have open meeting. We have minutes. We tabling any tonight?
Just
Well, I had an issue with one of them.
January 4th, right?
January 4th will be tabled. Regarding December 14th,
I wasn't here, so I'll abstain from that.
Which is the one I had the problem with? Was it
21st.
21?
as to 14th, Jerry will be abstaining. As to corrections to the 21st, Suzanne, you have a correction.
I had a correction because it says there was a vote on the ratifying of the letter that you drafted, or someone drafted, and I didn't even know there was a vote, and it says I affirmed, and I didn't vote. I was trying to reach Mr. Calhoun giving me a piece of paper, because I'm the clerk, and I'm supposed to receive papers from people, and I was trying to reach, and I couldn't, so I walked over, and I guess there was a vote when I walked over to get the paper, and I didn't even know.
Do you
I
wanna be
don't
listed?
even know if Tony knew.
Do you want to be listed as an abstention?
Why don't we,
I would have voted differently than abstention, I'll tell you that much, but I didn't know there was a vote.
What, do you want to enter correction? That's
No,
another-
we can't do that.
Can't do that.
Okay.
At this meeting.
No.
why don't we
It's just-
table
it's
these
just-
as well?
Why don't we table the minutes of the 21st until January 25th? We can take it up then.
And I'm not, no blame
No, it just
or
needs
anything.
to
She
be
just couldn't
correct.
see.
I think that's the other problem,
Yeah.
is when we're at another venue, we're in a different lineup, so it's difficult for us to see or
Yeah.
necessarily hear what each person is saying.
What?
And I was standing, walking over, I think, when you guys were voting. And I don't think Tony voted either, but I don't know.
A lot of moving parts.
I looked on the tape, and you can see me walking, and Tony's just, he doesn't say anything either.
All right.
Yeah.
We'll take the minutes of
Take
December
a look at
21st.
look at the tape yourself. I mean,
Up on January 25th. Regarding December 14th, Jerry's abstaining, he's not
December
present. December 14th, yes, I'm sorry.
I can do that one, I read that one.
Corrections or additions on December 14th, 2023? Is
For myself.
there a motion to approve the minutes of December 14th, 2023? Give that to you, Ms. Murphy, a second.
Second, Matt.
Give that to Mr. Finneran. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those are approved. Number 2, we have a request for insubstantial change to comprehensive permit number 17-16M at Al Magansett Crossing LLC, 676 North Falmouth Highway, with a vote anticipated.
That's that.
So you have the applicant here, so I guess you can speak to that.
Poor guy had to hang all night, huh?
That's okay. Thanks, Michael Galasso.
Last but not least.
107 Lakeview Avenue, I'm the developer of Magansett Crossing. It's a 10-unit affordable housing project. The original landscape plan showed the community garden that we're putting in for our residents to be laid over top of the septic system. We've recently been working with Farming Falmouth, and there's adequate space in between building number 2 and number 3 to relocate the garden there. They thought that would be a much better location, plus it's much closer to our residents too. So the request is to relocate it from its originally planned spot on top of the septic system to between buildings 2 and 3, and it'll be right next to the playground that we're putting in too. So we've got two things going on, the playground and the community garden, both of which were on the original site plan and landscape plan.
Questions?
No, other than,
Has your landscape plan complied with the order of condition?
Yes, so we were putting in our landscaping during the, it was November and December, and not all the species that we wanted to put in were available. So we planted what we could. We've asked our landscaper to do an assessment and to give that to the administrator to take a look at, and anything that's missing. Now, there isn't anything that I believe is really missing. It might have been a different species, and most of the time it was a larger one, will be replaced this spring.
Okay.
And the town is holding some of our money until we make compliance with that, too.
Okay,
So
great.
they've got it.
Thank you.
you know, moving into the central location just seems to make sense, but I did always hear that the lettuce was greener over the septic tank, but that's your choice.
Yeah, I'm following the professionals.
I know nothing about that.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
Just a random question, but how many tenants are actually going to use this community?
Well, we've got 10 units here, 9 of them occupied by 9 single women, and there are 22 kids that live in there. So they're all involved in this garden and the play area. So we're hoping it gets a lot of use.
Okay, thank you.
Gary, anything?
Nothing, thank you.
It's a lot of grazers.
So, just say, please keep working with the zoning administrator, make sure we get compliance with the landscape plan.
And then there were a couple of items that we had listed to you before that we need to make sure are complied with prior to the town giving you the final amount that they owe you.
Correct, yeah, I think Jacob's been working on that.
So regarding the request for insubstantial change, I will make a motion that what is requested is an insubstantial change and to approve. Second?
I'll second that.
Theron, any discussion on the motion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Thank you very much.
Board discussion.
I just want an update as far as council. Well,
That'll be board updates.
So if you're asking about special town council?
yeah, will he be there?
Yes.
24th?
Yes.
25, excuse me. Well, I might be there early, Jim. Now, is town council going to be there as well?
I
would
don't believe
assume.
so. I believe it's my understanding that special town council will be standing in the stead of regular town council.
Well, I would have to say that that would be less to my liking. I think, I don't know, let's use a golf analogy. I mean, this group has a full bag of clubs, you know? We went out and got ourselves a new driver, but, you know, and like, as I said earlier, I don't golf anymore because I found out it was a gentleman's sport, so I don't qualify.
You have a whole box.
Yeah, but they're of no use to me. But I mean, when I did golf, I had a favorite club, was my 4-wood on the fairway, and I was pretty good with it.
So
And
I guess the only thing I
we-
would recommend is to limit discussion about
Yeah, well, I mean, that's
projects
fine, but,
that are not.
I mean, we can, I just disagree with that. I think we need all the help we can get. And it follows along with my desire for outside counsel, but by no means did I think that was going to eliminate our inside counsel, or if you prefer. And I personally would be much more comfortable if we had all the help we can get. And I have respect for our town council, and I think that they, for the sake of us and all the people in this town, I think they should be participating. At least Brian, I have great confidence in him, and that's.
Can you inquire, Noreen, if they plan to attend, just to see? The other reason I think it might be beneficial, at least for the first meeting, just to make sure there's a seamless transition, if they're not going to. Just
Yeah.
make an inquiry.
I will ask, I'm anticipating that they're not anticipating being there.
I would think that special counsel is in their stead.
I think they felt once you voted the way you voted, that you had made a determination.
That's certainly not what I intended, and I'd be much more comfortable with us having all the help we can get and more.
Is Mr. Haverty
He's
still?
still- Yeah, I think
Okay, so we'll have,
We're gonna have two.
attorneys.
Yeah.
we're gonna have two experts.
More, we're never gonna have as many as they have. And I don't think it's prudent for us to limit ourselves in any fashion.
Kind of
That's
getting
just
off-
my feeling.
Getting a little off topic of
Yeah,
updates, so.
well, it's, we haven't had any updates on that, so it is an update, and it was necessary. And I updated you on my feelings, and I think I made them known right from the get-go.
Future agenda items? All right. Board, next meeting is January 25th, 2024, 6 PM at the Lawrence School Auditorium, 113 Lakeview Avenue, Falmouth. Is there a motion to?
I was gonna ask, do you anticipate getting February at Lawrence School too?
We'll have to look at the turnout. It's,
We'll judge from this meeting.
That venue is based on capacity for people that appear.
Yeah, okay.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Is there a second? Second. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? We are adjourned.
Get ready for that chilly.